Once a weapon that harvested countless lives in the hands of the Grim Reaper, the Scythe of Death now lies silently in a grocery store for 50 years without anyone paying attention. Everyone believes it to be just an ordinary scythe. However, I spent all of my savings to buy it. Those around me, witnessing this scene, were convinced that I had surely gone mad. No one expected that the instant I touched the scythe, a wave of horrifying power from the Grim Reaper surged straight into my body. This scythe, seemingly forgotten, was in fact a weapon that had evolved over time, a part of my exclusive gear. It turned out this was not merely an item in a game, but the embodiment of a fusion between the virtual and the real worlds. At 18, each of us must participate in the pivotal class transition ceremony to embrace new powers and embark on a mysterious adventure in a world where the boundaries between reality and fantasy seem to vanish. Yet, 99 out of 100 students transitioning chose life-related careers. Compared to these valuable support roles, fighting professions were what everyone dreamed of. Today happened to be the day the school held the class transition ceremony. As the ceremony began, the principal started calling the students for their transitions. However, the first student chose a profession tied to life, a powerful warrior. She stood as if struck by lightning under a clear sky. Her fate was sealed. She could only be the lowest-tier warrior. Soon after, the second student also opted for a life-related career. Master of Tactics beside me frowned at this sight. Perhaps it was quite challenging for them to obtain a primary fighting profession. But when it was the turn of the belle, Hatuyet, to take the stage, he was astonished. Her spirit power was double that of others, giving her a tremendous chance to become a mage. Twice the capacity meant a great likelihood of transitioning into a mage. Just as he finished speaking, an extraordinary phenomenon erupted around Hatuyet that shook the heavens. Above her head appeared two enormous elemental orbs, clearly indicating she had at least reached a rare profession. In the end, she had transitioned into a rare profession, elemental mage. This earned her continuous praise from both the principal and the master of magic. Yet when it was my turn, the master told me I could only transition into a life-related profession. But as I stepped into the transition space, in that moment, a terrifying surge of energy erupted from beneath my feet. Almost immediately, a beam of light shot up to the heavens. The principal and the master instantly realized this was a sound from heaven and earth, even more powerful than what Hatuyet had produced. At that moment, Hatuyet felt a surge of tension as she stared intently at the magic circle. Suddenly, a student shouted loudly, pointing at the sky, "Look up there." Everyone glanced upward, their eyes widening in horror as thousands of dark silhouettes slowly emerged from the pitch-black clouds. Their grotesque, twisted forms resembled fleeing demons from hell, sending chills down everyone's spine. The timid students immediately fell to the ground in fear, trembling. Meanwhile, the dark figures in the sky simultaneously turned their gaze towards me. In an instant, they transformed into streams of soul energy, rushing into my body, awakening my only hidden profession, the zombie mage. However, this revelation sparked envy and fear in many hearts. I paid no mind to their reactions and quickly prepared to return to school. But the law master hastily called me back, expressing his eagerness to witness the skills of my unique hidden profession. I swiftly activated my profession's abilities and discovered that I could only summon a black iron skeleton warrior. As if summoned by my will, a skeleton warrior appeared before me in an instant. The nearby students gasped in horror at the sight. Suddenly, the master pointed towards the skeleton warrior and unleashed a beam of light. The result was astonishing. The undead warrior's killing intent surged dramatically. This surprised the master, who was at level 52, while I was merely level 1. How could a summoned warrior exude such hostility towards him? However, after resolving his confusion, the master greeted me with an acknowledgement. Just as I conceived the idea of summoning the undead warrior, the system announced that the summoning space had begun. In that moment, I finally understood that what I had witnessed was indeed real. As long as the zombie mage increased in level, the summoning space would become limitless, capable of reaching the level to slay dragons in the blink of an eye. Before I could ponder further, Hatuyet rushed over to ask about the exam results. I merely mumbled a response and turned away. But not long after returning home, a notification appeared before me from the system. Detected main character Punishment Mage. Profession meets requirements. The strongest innate system is being linked. Gain comprehensive enhancement of innate abilities. Skill damage conversion activated. All skill effects increased by 5 times. All damage will be borne by the summoned entity. I immediately summoned the undead warrior and found that its attributes had indeed increased 5-fold. Combined with the damage conversion skill at the same level, I would stand unyielding, unable to be defeated. The next day, my close friend Huang Mao wanted to team up with me. I declined his offer, stating that I wanted to take the entrance exam for Jiangjing University, as completing dungeons solo was the fastest way to level up. Upon hearing this, the principal was astonished. To enter Jiangjing University, one must achieve at least level 12 before the major exam. My sister, Lam Mak Han, had reached level 16 to be accepted by Jiangjing. Now, there was only 1 week left until the major exams. Leveling up to 12 and beyond was as tough as reaching the heavens. But I didn't think so. I confidently declared that I would succeed. With that, I prepared to enter the dungeon for beginners. Next to Ha Tuyet, the school's belle wanted to compete with me in leveling speed. I could only look at her with a helpless expression. Truly, she was a peculiar girl. As soon as I entered the dungeon, I immediately used all my mental energy to summon 4 skeleton warriors, ready to commence battle. Then, using my thoughts to control them, I directed them to eliminate the monsters. The enhanced undead warriors easily dealt with the monsters here as if they were merely chopping vegetables. Before long, my experience skyrocketed. In less than half an hour, I leveled up. At the same time, the number of skills and the count of summoned undead warriors also increased. All attributes of the undead warriors surged up to 125. Next, the monster elimination speed increased significantly, and I discovered that the movements of the undead warriors could create a map. At that moment, a fortunate creature emerged from the grass. This was my chance to test my active skill. The skill, enhanced 5-fold, instantly annihilated it in the blink of an eye. Moreover, I leveled up to level 3, which increased my summoning count by 3. The attributes of the undead warriors also rose to 175. Subsequently, the level 5 and level 6 monsters became the prey of my undead warriors. In less than an hour, I leveled up again. At this rate of leveling up, before being forced out of the dungeon, I could reach level 8. Meanwhile, the principal was discussing my leveling speed with the head of the Ha clan regarding me and Ha Tuyet. He believed that Ha Tuyet was the one with the highest potential to enter Jiangjing University, considering that she only needed to reach level 5 to have a chance. Previously, both Tothian Tan and Lam Mak Han had also been rare professions and entered the dungeon at level 5. But what Ha Tuyet didn't know was that my level had already reached level 5, yet that was still not my ultimate goal. I led the skeleton warriors to search for stronger monsters. Suddenly, a branch shot towards me at lightning speed, knocking me back violently against a tree trunk. Looking up, I saw the information of an 8th-level long willow tree appear before my eyes. I immediately commanded a skeleton warrior to strike at the tree's trunk. However, what I expected, a single blow to take it down, did not happen. After counting, it took 4 strikes just to sever it. At this rate, the efficiency of leveling up would drop significantly. Fortunately, I didn't have to search for monsters here. Just a glance around revealed hundreds of trees surrounding me. This was truly an ideal place for leveling up. Thus, I summoned all the undead warriors. They wasted no time rushing into the forest. After 2.5 hours, the long willow tree was finally brought down. My experience was growing. However, I was forced out of the dungeon by the principal, who hurriedly asked if I had encountered any trouble. I calmly replied that I had eliminated all the monsters and made my way outside. Upon seeing my level, his face immediately displayed a look of astonishment. But I told him it wasn't over yet. I wanted his permission to venture out to the outskirts of West Sea City to continue my upgrade. The principal, regaining his cheerful demeanor, said, "All right, wait a moment. He'll pave a smooth path for you." He then returned to his seat and began boasting about my achievements to everyone. When the other teachers heard that I had reached level 7, They were utterly astonished, beads of cold sweat forming on their brows. At that moment, I sought a quiet spot to meditate. The summoning space had expanded up to 70 slots, but with my current spirit energy, I could only summon 24 skeleton warriors. It seemed that filling up the summoning space would take quite some time. Just then, Hatuyet, who had just reached level 5, stepped out of the beginner dungeon, still feeling proud of having broken her own beginner record. But upon seeing me meditating, her face instantly morphed into one of disbelief. She couldn't comprehend how I had reached level 7. At that moment, her father arrived to pick her up. Noticing his daughter's mood, he shared with me that it had taken her 10 hours to complete the beginner dungeon. Hatuyet was taken aback by this revelation. If there were more monsters inside, couldn't she have reached level 8? The next day, I went to trade at the Divine Empire, confirming my identity to freely accept missions and depart. Missions were categorized into normal, nightmare, and crazy area tasks. Shortly after, I left the main city and headed to the outskirts of West Sea City. But only a short way in, I caught the attention of a goblin. It brandished a wooden staff and charged at me. I merely needed to focus my thoughts, and it stood there, bewildered. Its wooden staff struck the head of a zombie warrior without inflicting any damage. In an instant, it was decapitated by the zombie warrior. I then summoned all the zombie warriors to hunt for monsters. In a short time, notification windows about monster kills and material collection began popping up continuously. At this rate, reaching level 15 before the big exam wouldn't be a big deal. Currently, my level had reached 10, and my comprehensive enhancement skill had also advanced 1 tier. The skill effect had increased from 5 times to 10 times, and my spirit energy had also significantly improved in quality. Not only that, a copper-level zombie warrior had been summoned, and surprisingly, it also possessed an active skill. Just when I thought I could act freely in this area, an arrow suddenly flew toward me. I didn't have time to react before it struck my right shoulder, and at that moment, a shadow swept past me. After locking eyes with him, I realized he wasn't a threat to me. But just then, 2 strangers appeared before me. Clearly, one of them was an archer who had just shot at us. They asked if I had seen a black-clad assassin, but I remained silent. With an expressionless face, he drew his sword from its sheath. Instantly, his gaze narrowed. "You just shot at us, apologize." The man casually uttered an apology, yet my mind was in turmoil. The arrow that struck us had caused no harm at all. At that moment, another sorcerer's face darkened as he noticed the undead warrior beside me, realizing it wouldn't be an easy match. He remarked that those with awakened professions like us were surely not to be trifled with. Thankfully, his teammate reminded him to hold back, allowing the sorcerer to reluctantly retreat, sparing their lives for the time being. They had to understand that if a fight broke out, they would undoubtedly meet their demise. Next, I commanded the undead warriors to commence a frenzied massacre. From level 10 onward, the experience required for leveling up had tripled. In fact, I needed to eliminate at least 5,000 goblins to advance. At this rate, I could potentially reach level 16 before the major exam. Suddenly, I recalled my sister. She had also reached level 16 before her exam. Although she was a rare sword dancer, her leveling speed couldn't possibly surpass mine. Could it be that she had teamed up with others to share experience? Thinking about the more valuable nightmare dungeons, perhaps that was why she returned last time, covered in wounds. Resolving my doubts, I decided to personally investigate tomorrow. Just then, a figure slowly approached, and I instantly became alert. After all, anyone who ventured here wasn't likely to be a good person. But upon seeing him for the first time, I realized he was the female assassin from the other day. He approached and asked if I had any food. I pulled out a sweet potato and handed it to him, only for him to shove it into his mouth in an instant. Following that, he gulped down water like it was the Ganges River. Satisfied and full, he began to inquire about my name. I merely regarded him coldly without responding. Perhaps sensing my lack of social skills, he suggested we use a detection spell together. However, when our fingers touched, I received no useful information. He stared at my information, astonished. I had never heard of a profession called Necromancer. Was the skeleton I saw this afternoon one of his summons, Milan? That was a rare undead creature. Seeing that I still had no intention of replying, he continued to probe. He began to grow anxious. Don't tell me you're so handsome yet also mute. I felt at a loss for words and could only ask why I couldn't see his information. Seeing that I could speak, he was overjoyed and pulled out a wave-shielding badge from his belongings. He claimed that as long as I wore it, no one would be able to see my information. Can you stop the detection spell? With that, he immediately shattered the emblem in his hand. Try to use the detection spell on me, I slowly pointed out. Instantly, his information appeared before my eyes. He was a level 19 shadow assassin. Surprisingly, he seemed to sense something. He quickly turned his head to look back. At that moment, I also noticed 3 shadowy figures surrounding us on the map. Just then, a K stood up, intending to bid me farewell when suddenly a swordsman lunged at us. Fortunately, he reacted in time to avoid this calamity. Little did we know, this was merely a marking skill. Above our heads appeared a symbol of an arrow. For an assassin capable of stealth, this was clearly a death sentence. In an instant, several shadows manifested. I knew you were the accomplices, filthy assassins like rats. Combining with those immortal summoners, it's quite the combination. Upon seeing this, Akei quickly explained that I had nothing to do with this and was ready to surrender the ultimate skill scroll. However, they expressed their preference for killing instead. As soon as Akei heard this, he immediately urged me to find a chance to escape. Then he chuckled softly, telling me that the night was the dark assassin's domain and he had a way to escape. But I understood he was merely comforting himself. If we could defeat them, we wouldn't have been chased earlier in the afternoon. Moreover, he had lost the most crucial stealth advantage. At that moment, one of them shouted, signaling to attack. The mage immediately cast a light spell, which not only dispelled the darkness, but also increased the hit rate of their magic. The warrior raised his shield, preparing to defend against all attacks, while the archer readied his bow and arrow. The trio's coordination was flawless. Yet I didn't regard this at all. All I needed was to raise my hand and summon a zombie warrior. The mage immediately showed a look of disgust and launched a fireball at me. Akei, seeing this, swiftly pulled me away from the attack. Unexpectedly, a trap had been set under his feet, and at the same time, the archer's skill shot toward him. Akei's eyes narrowed. This time, he was certain it was the end. But in the very next second, his expression froze in shock. A horde of zombie soldiers suddenly appeared, shielding him in the center. At the same time, the mage's fireball exploded against the zombie soldiers, and the archer's skill was effortlessly blocked by them. Even the charging warrior was stopped in his tracks by the undead soldiers. The zombie soldiers flung the warrior aside. Moments later, they emerged from the sea of flames, completely unscathed. The mage, witnessing this, couldn't believe his eyes. How is this possible? That kid is only level 10. The other 2 were equally stunned, unable to fathom how their skills had been rendered ineffective. Their skills were completely useless against my summoned creatures. Suddenly, their expressions froze as flames of death appeared on their bodies. In an instant, dozens of zombie soldiers surrounded them. Beside me, F stood with his mouth agape, unable to believe what he was seeing. Without hesitation, I commanded all the undead warriors to charge forward. Seeing this, the mage quickly activated his magical shield. However, a mere brush against it caused cracks to appear. Just as the shield was shattered, the mage completed his fire spell. Immediately, a fierce flame erupted from him, sending 2 zombie soldiers flying. However, as soon as his flames died down, the zombie soldiers charged again. In the blink of an eye, his body was slashed into 3 pieces. The archer, in a desperate flight, was drenched in icy sweat. In less than 2.5 seconds, a level 20 frontline warrior was annihilated. Moreover, despite possessing 1,000 agility points, he couldn't escape the relentless undead warriors. Meanwhile, the knight was forced to utilize his maximum defensive skill. For a brief moment, he could endure damage twice that of his own. He immediately activated a charge skill, attempting to break free from the encirclement, but I wouldn't let him escape so easily. With a mere flick of my hand, I commanded the undead warrior to use its active skill, instantly amplifying its power. The knight's face turned ashen, What kind of bizarre creature is this? Its attributes are beyond belief, and it can still use skills. In a flash of red light, his defensive skill was shattered. At that moment, he accepted his fate with a serene heart, ready to meet death. Kay, standing beside me, was left speechless. He hadn't even moved a muscle and had already defeated 3 formidable level 20 warriors. As they fell, their equipment and items scattered. However, the loot was utterly useless to me and AK. I could only sell them at a personal bank. The only valuable item I had was a basic skill scroll that could grant the user a reward below level 20. However, I was embarrassed to admit that I had no idea how to use it. Standing beside me, AK immediately noticed my difficulty and said, "Let me show you how to use it properly." All I had to do was shout the word use loudly, they said. So I followed their advice and yelled, but nothing happened. Instead, they teased me, saying my voice sounded nice. It seemed I needed a special ring to activate the skill scroll. Without delay, I channeled my spiritual energy into the scroll, and immediately it erupted into fierce flames. Simultaneously, I gained the skill Corpse Explosion, which could deal 10 damage to enemies within a meter radius of the corpse. Although this skill seemed trivial, with the comprehensive enhancement of my talents, it could inflict 100 damage to foes within a 10-meter radius and even cause the corpses of the defeated to explode. This was truly a devastating area of effect spell. As I emerged from my meditative state, I was greeted by Ake's perfect smile, and my heart swelled with fondness for him. At that moment, he handed me a chest. Within a 10-meter radius, enemies would receive 100 damage, and the corpses of the defeated foes could explode. This was truly like a wide-area damage skill. Instantly, I snapped back from my meditative state and saw Ake's perfect smile. My affection for him increased significantly. At that moment, he handed me a chest. Consider this a token of gratitude from the young lady. As I opened it, I discovered a supreme skill scroll inside, capable of activating skills ranging from level 40 to 70, valued at 100 times more than a basic skill scroll. My heart was filled with doubt clearly. This skill scroll had drawn continuous attacks upon her, yet now she wishes to hand it to me. She doesn't seem like your typical materialistic girl. The result revealed that I had obtained a supreme skill scroll, but I was soon discovered by 3 attackers, forcing me to flee from East Sea to West Sea. Shortly after, he inquired which academy I wished to enroll in. I told him I wanted to attend the Lower Capital Academy. He insisted that I must remember the Tower of Lower Deity. First challenge at the Tower of Lower Deity offers double rewards. The higher you ascend, the better your score will be. Moreover, in the Lower Capital Academy, points are more precious than gold. As we spoke, he fell asleep beside me. Taking this opportunity, I also entered a meditative state to recover my spirit. The next morning, Ake bid me farewell. Before leaving, he reminded me to level up diligently, saying that when I became powerful, I could help him level up too. After he departed, I went to the battlefield of the day. Looking at the 3 corpses on the ground, a bold idea sparked in my mind. My right hand slowly rose as a strange red light coiled around it. At the same time, a searing flame erupted from the corpse, followed by a loud explosion. This explosion, amplified by my innate talent, truly became a divine-level area of effect skill. With this overpowered skill, I now had high hopes of completing the West Sea Mines quest. Soon, I arrived at the mission entrance, where I heard countless voices calling for teammates. It seemed the difficulty of this quest was quite high. Without hesitation, I summoned a zombie soldier to accompany me. Stepping confidently into the crowd, I approached the entrance of the quest. Before me appeared a selection board, allowing me to choose between normal difficulty and nightmare. At that moment, a man used a divination spell on me, but the result revealed nothing about my information. I was nearly scared stiff by the skeletal warrior. Those around me, witnessing my strength, immediately invited me to join their team, but I declined them all without hesitation. I made the decisive choice to enter the nightmare realm alone. Everyone buzzed with excitement as they saw me venture into the nightmare by myself. This kid can't possibly be insane, can he effed? Our team isn't even sure we can survive the nightmare, yet he dares to go solo. As soon as I stepped into the village, I spotted a goblin lurking. The attributes it possessed left me utterly astonished. Indeed, the monsters in this nightmare realm were far stronger than those in the regular version. However, compared to the attributes of the skeletal warriors, they still lacked the power to threaten me. I immediately summoned all the skeletal warriors. At once, my will surged forward. 2 skeletal warriors swiftly dispatched the level 14 gatekeeper. I received 4,200 experience points, 10 times that of the regular version. I commanded all skeletal warriors to act in unison, determined to scour every corner of the cave, leaving not a single beast unaccounted for. Time had drawn to a close. The announcement of monster extermination and material collection echoed continuously. In less than 5 minutes, I had leveled up. The number of skeletal warriors had reached 56, and I made a startling discovery. After reaching level 10, the basic attributes had doubled. All attributes, once at 10 points, now surged to 20 points. Currently, the comprehensive attribute score of the skeletal warriors had reached a terrifying 1,700. Yet, what astonished me was that the skill Corpse Explosion had not upgraded. If only a K were here, perhaps she would know the reason. Suddenly, a deafening roar shattered my train of thought. A massive wolf with a formidable beak materialized before me. It was the elite leader of this pack, its attributes far surpassing those of my skeletal warriors. But my advantage lay in numbers. As soon as I commanded, all skeletal warriors surged forward. Simultaneously, the Wolf King unleashed a fearsome howl, yet its damage was not enough to wipe out my skeletal fighters. Next, awaiting it, was a frenzied assault from the skeletal warriors. In an instant, it was battered and bruised. It roared fiercely once more, flinging the skeletal fighters aside before turning to flee. At that moment, the door to the adjacent room creaked open, revealing hundreds of glowing red eyes. Instantly, a horde of ferocious wolves poured out, and at the same time, their attributes flashed before me. They were weak, but just strong enough to become a source of experience for me. I immediately ordered the skeletal warriors to advance and test their strength. The result, 1/ eliminated a wolf instantly, earning me 2,800 experience points. Following that, I activated the Corpse Explosion skill on its carcass. Just a second later, a powerful explosion erupted among the wolves, sending debris soaring into the sky. And I received a hefty amount of experience points. Continuing to employ the Corpse Explosion skill, the sounds of explosions rang out continuously. My experience points skyrocketed from level 11, jumping from 32 to 72. As the pack of wolves lay defeated, the shadow of the Wolf King re-emerged, but it stood upon the corpses of its fallen kin. A massive blade descended toward my head. Yet, just as the blade was a mere 2.5 centimeters from me, it suddenly halted. It seemed an invisible force held the blade back, preventing it from advancing an inch further. All thanks to the passive skill damage transfer. All the damage was absorbed by the summoned creatures. I could only watch as the head of a skeletal warrior shattered, the soul flame within it dimming. Moments later, its body crumbled to dust. The second warrior met the same fate, leaving me utterly astonished. Just one strike. I had lost 2 skeletal warriors in an instant. It struck me then that my greatest weakness lay in my frail physique. Perhaps if that blow had landed on a skeletal warrior, it wouldn't have been so easily destroyed. I realized that I must enhance my physical strength from now on. At that moment, the skeletal warrior was being overwhelmed by the Goblin King. The discrepancy in their attributes was simply too vast. Therefore, I summoned all my skeletal warriors to attack. Instantly, they swarmed over the Goblin King, and its wounds began to multiply. Suddenly, it emitted a blinding light and leaped high into the air. As it landed, a shockwave erupted, sending my skeletal warriors flying. Almost immediately, it unleashed a fire breath. In an instant, my skeletal warriors were engulfed in searing flames. Seeing their blood deplete, I knew I had to stop this skill at once. I attempted to use Fire Soul on it. The result not only severed its spell, but also ignited its head in flames. At the same time, all my skeletal warriors charged at the Goblin King, which looked on with eyes full of resentment. In the blink of an eye, its massive frame was sent flying. The system notified me that I had gained 40,000 experience points, a copper dagger, a copper magical cloak, and a treasure chest from the Goblin King. I immediately donned the cloak. Both my spirit and physique increased by 10 points, and the cooldown time for my skills was reduced by 5. At this moment, my level had risen to 12, and the number of summons increased to 60. My skills had also seen remarkable upgrades. With a joyful heart, I teleported out of the dungeon. Everyone looked on in awe as I emerged from the dungeon alive. Look, he's wearing the cloak of triumph. He truly overcame the nightmare all by himself. In an instant, a crowd gathered around me. However, I chose to ignore them, calmly stepping out into the fields, thinking to take advantage of the cooldown time to meditate. I aimed to restore my spirit. Simultaneously, this nightmare had revealed my weaknesses to me. I came to understand the potential of certain skills. If used wisely, the exploding corpse skill could become a powerful area damage ability. Fire Soul not only has the ability to disrupt an enemy's skills, but also serves as an unguardable attack. Even with severe injuries, it would be hard to withstand its might. Time flew by swiftly after 12 hours. My spirit was nearly restored. Thus, I prepared to enter the West Sea Mine to level up. However, upon arrival, I sensed something was amiss. The entrance to the mine was blocked by a throng of people. I could see a man confronting a prominent figure from a guild. The members of the Royal Guild are too domineering. Why won't you let us enter the mine? Restoring my spiritual power, this time the dungeon has helped me recognize the weaknesses in my body while understanding the true potential of my skills. The skill Corpse Explosion, if utilized wisely, can turn into a devastating area of effect attack. The Soul Flame can not only sever my enemy's abilities, but also launch attacks unfazed by their defenses. No matter how much health one loses, enduring it becomes nearly impossible. As time swiftly flowed by, my spiritual power was nearly fully restored after 12 hours. Therefore, I prepared to venture into the West Sea Mine dungeon for an upgrade. However, upon arrival, I sensed something was amiss. The entrance to the dungeon was blocked by a throng of people. I spotted a man confronting a gang leader from the Dynasty Guild. Your guild is too overbearing. Why won't you let us into the dungeon? Without hesitation, the Dynasty Guild members unleashed their fire skills. The man was instantly flung back. Witnessing the man's demise, everyone else quickly fled. How dare a mere nobody question the authority of our Dynasty Guild? Whoever doesn't wish to live can come forward. Seeing this, I turned to ask a bystander about the commotion. From his words, I learned that the Dynasty Guild sought to obtain the Golden River from the infamous Wang Lingguo, but the Golden River could only drop from the Nightmare Dungeon. I paid no attention and continued moving forward. Then, coldly, I said to the members of the Royal Guild, "Step aside, you're blocking my way into the dungeon." Hearing this, the leader immediately showed interest. "Do you even know who you're talking to, kid?" My eyes immediately turned sharp. Don't make me say it a second time. The leader quickly used a detection skill, only to find out I was just a level 12 rookie with a profession he had never heard of. Yet suddenly, the intensity in my gaze made him feel uneasy. Why does this kid's gaze make me feel so anxious? He quickly feigned calmness, raising his wand toward me. "If you take another step, don't blame me for being rude." The onlookers urged me to refrain from acting rashly, but I disregarded their warnings and stepped forward a few paces. The Dynasty Guild members drew their swords in unison. In the next moment, a skeletal warrior charged toward the leading mage. Seeing this, he immediately activated a magical shield, shouting, "I will stand here, you cannot break my shield." Yet, the instant the skeletal warrior appeared, a crack formed in the shield. Before he could process this, the relentless assault from the skeletal warrior came crashing down. With a loud boom, the shield shattered, and the mage was sent flying out in a pitiful manner. He quickly commanded everyone to attack. As soon as he finished speaking, a knight lunged at the skeletal warrior, proclaiming, "Watch me crush his summoned creature." However, he collided as if hitting a steel wall and was sent sprawling. Witnessing the skeletal warrior's power, the mage shouted, "We just need to eliminate that brat. I shall mercifully send them back to reunite." Following this, a loud explosion echoed as the Wolf King fell to the ground. I received 15,000 experience points, but the dropped materials were incredibly valuable. Immediately, I pressed on deeper into the exploration path. As I ventured deeper, I discovered that the monsters only grew stronger. Since entering the dungeon, it had only been an hour, yet I had already leveled up once. At this rate, if I continued for a few more rounds, I could reach level 19. It was then that I noticed, nestled in the depths of the cave, a massive goblin sleeping soundly. Without hesitation, I activated my skill to scout it out, revealing its terrifying attributes, along with 3 formidable active skills. It truly felt more fearsome than the Wolf King. Suddenly, my scouting skill roused it from its slumber, accompanied by a deafening roar that shook the very air. It sprang to its feet, ready to unleash its wrath. These grotesque creatures would vanish on their own. Everyone in the guild pointed their spears at me, and in an instant, 6 razor-sharp swords shot straight toward me. Onlookers shouted urgently, "Be careful, get out of the way," but I had no intention of dodging. Instead, I raised my hand and summoned even more skeletal warriors. The sound of clashing metal rang out as all the swords were blocked. This moment left everyone in stunned silence. Not just one creature summoned, but many more. At that moment, 2 skeletal warriors charged at them. The red-haired mage quickly ordered the knights to hold the line, buying time to cast his spells. Suddenly, a colossal fire serpent lunged toward me. This was the strongest skill of a level 20 mage, Fiery Serpent's Rampage. Yet, I remained still, unwavering. Before me, a swirling vortex of darkness emerged. Just as the red-haired mage believed victory was within his grasp, the fiery serpent erupted in a violent explosion among the skeletal soldiers before me. Moments later, 30 skeletal warriors surged forth from the sea of flames. The red-haired mage was thrown into a panic, his mind racing with the thought, "This man is truly a monster, a being who has transcended into a spirit mage." Just how powerful was he? Faced with the onslaught from dozens of members of the top guild, he showed no signs of fear. In the blink of an eye, he had neutralized the attacks from the strongest experts. Even more terrifying, the skeletal warriors he summoned could not be destroyed, no matter the assault they endured. At this point, the red-haired commander lost his composure, hurriedly commanding all guild members to form a formation and blow the signal horn to activate every possible support skill. I, however, remained calm and gently reminded the onlookers nearby to keep their distance. Then, I raised my hand and unleashed a skill soulfire. In an instant, a man from my guild ignited in fierce flames. Healer beside me immediately cast a healing spell. The red-haired mage laughed heartily, acknowledging the healer's swift response. Truly, a healer worthy of my guild. However, at that moment, the healer's face turned pale, and he covered his mouth in shock. In the next instant, amidst the horrified stares of onlookers, the commander collapsed to the ground. At this moment, I led my skeletal legion charging straight into the heart of the guild's defenses. They hastily activated their ultimate defense skill to withstand the assault. However, in the blink of an eye, their protective barrier shattered under the relentless onslaught of my skeleton warriors, and the commander was engulfed by my soulfire. The red-haired sorceress beside me was completely overwhelmed, her mind racing with the thought, "This guy is truly a monster." At this point, he had lost all will to fight. His only thought was to flee. But how could I allow him to escape my sight? Without hesitation, I cast Explosive Corpse on the fallen knights scattered across the battlefield. Instantly, a violent explosion engulfed the area within a 10-meter radius. The damage from the blast exceeded the life threshold of any knight. Anyone caught in the shockwave was obliterated in an instant. In the blink of an eye, everyone in my guild was reduced to ashes, their very remains turning to dust. After it was done, I casually wiped the blood from my face. Then, I slowly stepped into the dungeon. Witnessing this scene, the onlookers panicked, realizing that the guild would show no mercy. They urged everyone to leave immediately. Half an hour later, Guildmaster Shao emerged from the dungeon, bewildered. He was filled with suspicion as he found the once bustling area now eerily silent, devoid of any presence. Even his guild members had vanished without a trace. He began to suspect that something significant had transpired here. Yet, recalling the strength of his guild, he believed they could easily overpower anyone else. Moreover, there were no signs of battle, leading him to conclude that everyone must have simply left early. With his doubts eased, he led his team away from the scene. However, this time, only a low-level monster essence and some equipment dropped. Indeed, there were no longer any Goblin King essences to be found. But a spellbook that suited me perfectly had just dropped. It enhanced both my soulfire and explosive corpse skills. At this moment, my level had risen to 13. Time ahead was sufficient for me to complete 5 nightmare dungeons. Calculating, I could potentially reach level 16. Without delay, I stepped through the teleportation portal. Upon exiting, I realized the area around me was desolate. I instantly understood that leaving was the best choice for them. Otherwise, it could spell disaster for themselves. The next morning, having reached level 10, Ha Tuyet immediately set out to challenge the West Sea Mine dungeon. However, upon seeing me entering the dungeon alone, she was utterly astonished. She couldn't believe that I was capable of soloing a dungeon. But I am a rare elemental sorcerer. All I need is to find a slightly stronger team, and my upgrade speed will surpass even his. As this thought crossed her mind, her gaze became resolute. Yet, she couldn't fathom that I was not merely undertaking a standard dungeon raid, but facing a nightmare-level challenge. At this moment, I once again stood before the Goblin King. Without hesitation, I raised my hand to summon the army of skeletons, surrounding and obliterating him. In less than 2 minutes, the Goblin King lay defeated at my feet. I lifted my hand and told him that I didn't truly wish to kill him, but unfortunately, he could have helped me level up quickly. "Don't worry, just 3 more times, and it will be over," I said. After that, I stepped outside, intending to meditate while waiting for the dungeon cooldown. Suddenly, a figure approached. It was Xia Shui, looking exhausted as she inquired about my level. I gently told her that I had reached level 14. Upon hearing this, Xia Shui was taken aback. "What kind of insane leveling speed is this?" she exclaimed. She had just formed a party and struggled through 2 basic dungeons, barely managing to reach level 11. Even soloing, she couldn't have leveled up this quickly. With that, she turned and prepared to dive back into the dungeon. I felt a sense of confusion. Could it be that she didn't have a dungeon cooldown fawn? An hour later, when she emerged from the dungeon and saw me still sitting there, she immediately called for more teammates, clearly intent on risking it all. An hour later, Xia Shui was panting as she slumped down in front of me, her level now at 12. At this point, I could no longer hold back and asked her how she managed to bypass the dungeon cooldown. How powerful could a man who transitioned to a death mage truly be in this world? Others required 2.5 hours to complete a dungeon, but I needed only 5 minutes. The enchanting Xia Shui, in her desperate attempt to catch up to my level, tirelessly formed parties and rushed through dungeons. Yet she realized that no matter how hard she tried, the gap between us only widened. Ultimately, she gave up and plopped down beside me. I had no explanations to offer her. Instead, I asked her how she could bypass the dungeon cooldown. Xia Shui, hearing this, lit up with joy. It seemed there were things she didn't know that I did. "Just say a few nice words, and I'll share," she replied. Hearing this, I couldn't help but chuckle. Seeing that I had nothing to say, she handed me a stopwatch. This stopwatch could reduce the cooldown time of dungeons, but could only be used 10 times. Upon hearing this, I was astonished. I hadn't expected something so valuable to exist. Looking at her distressed expression as she handed it to me, it felt like it was worth a fortune. Suddenly, she shouted, "There are only 2.5 days left until the big exam. I need to use up the remaining 7 times and at least run through the dungeon 9 times to ensure I reach level 15. Hearing this sparked an idea in my mind. I could guide her through the dungeon, ensuring she reached level 15 without lifting a finger. But the condition was that we would use the cooldown stopwatch together. Upon hearing this, Xia Shui immediately agreed. She was clearly worn out. After 2 hours of rest, I led her to the dungeon entrance. Shortly after, I activated the stopwatch and selected the Nightmare Dungeon. This action made Xia Shui break out in a cold sweat. "Did you just choose a Nightmare Dungeon?" she asked, astonished. As she stepped into the dungeon and saw the attributes of the monsters, she was utterly terrified. Lin Moyu had truly lost her mind. Choosing the nightmare difficulty meant we were bound to perish. A thought of escape flickered in her mind, but the fear of my mocking laughter held her back, leaving her in hesitation. I explained to her that this method would lead to a quicker upgrade, assuring her that if she stayed close to me, she wouldn't face any danger. The next scene left Hattuit utterly astonished. The monsters, far stronger than those in regular dungeons, posed no threat to my skeletal army. Faced with my bone warriors, the enemy could only panic and flee. Before long, we had arrived at the lair of the wolf leader, an elite monster. Without delay, I tossed the carcass of the beast around the wolf leader and activated the skill Exploding Corpses to save time in the dungeon. As each monster exploded within the pack of wolves, Hattuit's experience points skyrocketed. Just then, the body of the wolf leader collapsed before her wide-eyed gaze. She couldn't believe that while her team had struggled for half an hour to defeat this beast, I merely had to raise my hand to bring it down. The Wolf King, which had taken her team half an hour to kill, fell at my mere gesture. Had he not witnessed it with his own eyes, he would never believe that someone at level 10 could solo a nightmare dungeon. However, what astounded him even more was the next spectacle. The Goblin King, which her team had to fight for over an hour, was eradicated by me in less than 5 minutes. Just as she was still in disbelief, the goblin lay dead under my skill, Corpse Explosion. At that moment, my level rose to 15. It was then he realized that the chasm between us was not something that could be bridged by mere effort. Approaching the dropped items, he was disappointed to find that the weapon was not the staff he had hoped for. After all, the goblin's staff was the best equipment for mages below level 20. Although it was available in the trading market, he didn't want to ask his father for money just yet. In the next moment, I tossed him the staff that had just dropped. Seeing the astonished expression on Hattuit's face, I pulled out a spellbook and mentioned that I didn't prefer using staves. Hearing this, Hattuit clenched her fists, overwhelmed with intense emotions to me. These items seemed utterly insignificant. Next, I bent down to pet the head of the spirit. "I'm sorry, but I need to kill you 5 more times." With that, I left Hattuit, who was still in shock, and headed toward the teleportation gate. However, Hattuit found my actions rather adorable. In the next half hour, we completed the dungeon 5 more times. The cooldown timer had fully expired, and Hattuit's level had risen to 14, filling her with immense joy. It seemed that gaining admission to the Hatton Academy was now a certainty. We're almost at level 16 now. Do you want to challenge yourself to become the top scorer? Achieving the title of regional top scorer not only grants you a wealth of points, but also opens the door to the Celestial Academy. Remember, the Celestial Academy is the strongest institution in the Divine Empire, where only the most elite talents are chosen. The only one from the West Sea to make it there is our senior, Tu Tian Tan. If you can successfully enter, the principal might even smile in his dreams. Hearing this, I immediately felt a surge of excitement. With such an opportunity, I had to give it a shot. At that moment, I noticed the little lamb searching for a team to fight alongside. Yet, others were dismissing him. After all, he was just an 11th level knight, far too weak to withstand the pressure. Even a basic team setup requires at least a level 13 to participate. Seeing this, I decided to bring him along for the dungeon raid, and Hattuit Xuan had no objections. Meanwhile, the president of the guild, Wang Chao, suddenly erupted in anger. "Have you all lost your minds? How could you think of blocking the entrance to the dungeon? Do you know what we, the Divine Empire's professionals, are capable of? Stay in the guild for the next 2 days. Don't go anywhere. You've reached level 16, so just relax and wait for the big exam." However, the deputy leader asked what to do about summoning them. President Wen Yan let out a cold laugh. "I've sent someone to investigate. If we lose too many powerful players, the forces of the undead are the least of your worries. On the first day of the big exam, I was targeted by the proctors. To increase the difficulty for me, they arranged high-level monsters. The result, I simply used a soul fire skill, and the high-level monster was reduced to ashes. Witnessing this, the proctors were left dumbfounded. Just a moment ago, Hattuit Xuan and I had invited our friend, Little Lamb, to join us for the dungeon raid. Upon hearing that 2 big shots wanted to help him level up, he was so moved that he burst into tears. "You two are truly my saviors." Suddenly, he looked at us with a mischievous grin. "Tell me all about the details between you two." Hattuit Xuan immediately grew furious. If you don't shut up, I'll tear your mouth off." Upon seeing this, Little Lamb quickly put on a polite facade. "From now on, I, Little Lamb, will follow the two esteemed ones." Hearing this, Tuichuan's anger subsided instantly. Xiao Zeng immediately made a gesture of encouragement and support. "Macvu, do your best tonight and try to win over Ha Tuichuan." No sooner had he finished speaking than a fireball shot toward him, causing him to flee in panic. Ha Tuichuan stood there, arms crossed, fuming. That loudmouth really deserves a beating. We quickly arrived at the entrance to the dungeon. When I selected the Nightmare Dungeon, Little Lamb immediately panicked. "Big bro, are you sure you're not mistaken about the dungeon level? If the nightmare monsters touch me, I'll be done for." Seeing his cowardice, Xiaoshuan couldn't help but feel amused. Why worry? This isn't just anyone's burden to bear. This is a powerful skill that has vanquished the Goblin King. Little Sheep gazed in disbelief at the boss corpse on the ground. "I can't believe I just witnessed the death of a nightmare-level boss that I was too scared to face." Instantly, he clung tightly to my leg. "Big brother, from now on, I'm sticking with you. Wherever you tell me to go, I will not go that way." Seeing this, Xiaoshuan began to mock him. "You call yourself a knight. Where's your knightly spirit? Don't be such a coward. What good is knightly spirit? With you around, why do I even need to be a knight?" Now all we had to do was wait for the grand exam to begin. At this moment, the principals from various schools stood upon the city walls, eagerly awaiting their students. Tomorrow marked the day of the grand exam. Among them, the students from the top-tier Shangdong School included a level 12 architect, while the second middle school boasted a level 13 archer. However, as the students from Yizhong School had yet to appear, the other principals began to smirk. "Mr. Liu, I heard your school has 2 geniuses set to enter college, but it seems they've hit a snag." Upon hearing this, Principal Liu started to worry. Had they encountered some mishap? Just then, silhouettes appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the setting sun. Spotting us return, the principal immediately sighed in relief. By this time, Little Sheep's level had risen to 12, and Xia Suishuan had reached 15. Witnessing this, the teachers from other schools couldn't help but feel envious. Our highest level was only 13. Yet, Mr. Lust's school had someone who achieved level 15. But the next scene left them even more astonished, as my level had reached the maximum of 16. When they saw the rare weapons in our hands, they began to grasp just how many dungeons we had traversed. Afterwards, the principal cheerfully sent us off on the bus home. The following day, the eagerly anticipated grand exam officially commenced. The principal handed us a teleportation crystal. Once shattered, it would transport us directly to the examination room. As I was teleported to the exam room, I discovered that the square was filled with thousands of candidates. Suddenly, a voice echoed, accompanied by a tower descending from the sky. The challenge tower had opened. Different professions would face various testing scenarios. Main professions would be assigned to the main battlefield, while support roles would be placed in non-combat scenarios. Upon completing the basic tests, candidates would have the option to choose their difficulty level. Different scores from varying difficulty levels would yield different results. Scores also represented the performance in this grand exam. Equipment brought along could be used normally. Additionally, no other items were allowed. Failure to comply would result in disqualification. At this moment, candidates began to line up for the challenge tower. But as my turn approached, those at the top of the tower began to discuss amongst themselves. "He is the new mage reported in the city of West Sea, the Lion Sorcerer. According to the rare regulations of our profession, we will summon a monster 2 levels higher than him." Immediately, a high-level sorcerer monster appeared before me. At the same time, the countdown for the examination task was on. As the time was about to end, I activated my Soul Flame skill. In just 0.1 seconds, the monster was reduced to ashes. The overseers, witnessing this scene, were left in utter disbelief. While others were struggling in this grand exam, I leisurely enjoyed some sweet potatoes. The sight stunned the overseers, for in my examination room, the task of eliminating monsters was handled entirely by my summoned creatures. Each of my undead warriors could wipe out monsters in an instant. It turned out that at that moment, I had used a soul flame to swiftly eliminate the sorcerer monster. Seeing this, the overseers immediately lost their composure. Yet, what could they do? In the blink of an eye, I had dispatched a monster, making it impossible to assess my professional limits. At that moment, an elder proposed an idea. That was to use the legendary professional exam to evaluate me. Soon after, a level 20 monster appeared before me. With just one soul flame, I effortlessly annihilated it. Witnessing this spectacle, the elder decisively declared that there was no need for further testing and directly opened the second round of assessments. Immediately, an announcement echoed throughout the hall. The first round of testing has concluded. The number of participants was 10,632, with 5,200 meeting the requirements. The scores have been revealed. Right after that, the scores appeared in front of everyone, and my score of 0.1 was far ahead of Prince Hao, the vice president of the Royal Guild. Seeing this, he immediately became suspicious, convinced that I must have used some kind of backdoor method to achieve such a result. As I looked at the leaderboard, I started to feel a headache, wondering whether I should hold back. After all, my score was already intimidating to others. Then, the broadcast announced the commencement of the second round. Contestants were free to choose one of 3 difficulty levels. The harder the monsters, the more points they would earn. The time limit was 30 minutes. Wang Zihua, eager to catch up with the scores of the top 3, unhesitatingly chose the Hell difficulty. Shui Chun, fully aware that she wasn't suited to solo powerful monsters, decided to rely on numbers and thus opted for the normal dungeon. The second person on the list was a rare class, a close combat assassin, strong in both solo and team fights, so he also chose the Hell difficulty. At this moment, all the overseers turned their attention to me, eager to see which difficulty I would select. Naturally, I chose the highest difficulty, Hell level. After all, my combat ability was incredibly resilient, even I felt a hint of fear. Shortly thereafter, an elite level 13 monster appeared before me. However, its attributes were so weak that I could hardly be bothered to look. 2 undead warriors would definitely suffice. I witnessed the undead warrior obliterating an elite monster with just one strike. Unfortunately, after defeating a creature, it takes 5 seconds for it to refresh. Seeing this, the instructors were left in disbelief. To think one could annihilate a Hell-level monster with a single summon, could even summon 2 at once. Meanwhile, Wang Zihua and the others were drenched in sweat. He had already taken down over 50 monsters, sitting there, triumphant. This time, I knew for sure that the top spot would be mine. Upon hearing the announcement, Wang Zihua was bubbling with excitement, eager to see the scoreboard. When he saw the results, he was taken aback. He had a monster-killing frequency of 5 seconds, capable of slaying 320 monsters in half an hour, but he had managed to defeat a staggering 301. Did he not need any time to eliminate monsters? Even several headmasters were astonished by my achievement. Let's not forget that in the past, Su Tiantian had excelled with only 700 points. This was during the 3rd trial. Contestants could freely choose a monster boss of varying difficulty for the challenge. I opted for the highest difficulty, Hell level. However, the monster's attributes ended up disappointing me. I hope the next 2 trials will provide a greater challenge. Immediately, a zombie soldier unleashed a frenzied attack, defeating the boss monster in one strike. The teachers witnessing this scene were once again astonished, as it was the first time they had seen a summoned creature capable of using skills. I quickly finished this trial round, and my score remained far ahead of the other contestants. Then the broadcast began to make an announcement. The 4th trial will significantly increase the difficulty. Each participant must face 10 waves of monsters, each consisting of 10 creatures. Regardless of whether they eliminate the previous wave, the next wave will refresh after 1 minute. The final wave will be led by a formidable boss. As long as they wipe out all the monsters, they will pass the trial. I want to see how he will respond. But the old man just laughed. I could tell that this trial posed no challenge for him. As soon as he finished speaking, I raised my hand to summon even more undead warriors. While others were exerting all their strength, I was using less than 1/10 of my power. The results left the judges in utter disbelief. It turned out that during the fourth trial, I had summoned a staggering 2,500 undead warriors, effortlessly wielding my soul flame skill while leisurely enjoying sweet potatoes. I could see that the judge might have been on the verge of a heart attack. How many hidden cards does this kid have? The fourth trial posed no pressure for him. In contrast, the other contestants wished their skills wouldn't refresh. Watching this scene, the other students sighed in relief as they relinquished this challenge. Realizing this situation, I knew it was time to showcase my true capabilities. I immediately recounted to everyone the story of how I single-handedly ventured into the Nightmare Dungeon. As time passed, only 5 contestants remained in the challenge. Meanwhile, the final wave of monsters was appearing. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Prince Hao revealed his secret trump card. For the next 5 minutes, his strength and agility surged by an astonishing 500%. However, once the effect wore off, he would be plunged into a weakened state for 30 minutes. In that moment, he descended like a vengeful deity, swiftly announcing the results of the challenge. 5 had surpassed the 4th round, yet my score remained far ahead of the rest. After the class, several believed their performances were enough to secure a spot at the academy in the capital. But the judges declared otherwise, warning that making it into the top 5 was just the beginning. In the final round, failure to shine brilliantly would still lead to elimination. They would be thrust into a combat arena teeming with all manner of monsters. The first wave would exceed 100, including elite leaders and even treasures. The battlefield was divided into 5 stages, each with its own scoring system. The highest level monsters could reach level 19. Slaying just one would earn 500 points. Once inside the arena, the judges could only observe the fluctuations in our scores. So if you have any secret cards up your sleeve, now is the time to use them. Moments later, I was transported into the combat arena, and the first wave of monsters materialized before me. Yet, all I could gauge was their levels. To my astonishment, I couldn't defeat a single zombie warrior with just one strike. If one blow wasn't enough, then perhaps 2 I activated my corpse explosion skill, and in an instant, I obliterated 10 monsters in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, the judge outside could hardly believe his eyes as he witnessed my score skyrocket. An additional 500 points. Could he have truly dispatched 10 monsters at once? I planned to wait for the next wave of monsters to draw close before unleashing my corpse explosion once more. However, I soon realized that the corpses here would only last for 10 seconds before vanishing. Faced with this predicament, I summoned an additional battalion of zombie warriors, 95 in total, just enough to draw the remaining monsters in. In no time, all the monsters were drawn together. I then unleashed my corpse explosion. In mere moments, a series of explosions erupted from the monsters' bodies, and my score soared. Within an instant, I gained an additional 4,500 points. The old man witnessing this was left utterly speechless. What exactly is the profession of a death mage? What are the limits of his power? Once I had dispatched all the monsters, I expected a wait for the next wave to arrive, but instead, a barrage of fireballs rained down from above. Seeing this, I immediately ordered the zombie soldiers to form a shield in front of me against the incoming attack. Once the assault had passed, a group of level 16 beastkin mages stood before me. I simply smiled at the sight. Now it's my turn. Meanwhile, the other contestants were in a panic, falling to the ground before the powerful monsters. As for me, I saw these monsters as mere experience to level up. Summoning just 100 zombie soldiers was enough to leave the other contestants in shock. A single corpse explosion skill even made the demon lord of hell break out in a cold sweat. So it turns out that, at this moment, hundreds of monsters corrupted by the power of hell suddenly appeared. Seeing this, none of the contestants dared to step forward to fight. But I didn't want to be like them, just sitting and waiting, so I advanced toward the horde of monsters. Behind me, Hatuyet hurriedly rushed forward, trying to stop me. What are you planning to do? There are over 100 powerful monsters ahead, but I paid no attention and continued moving toward the horde. However, my actions immediately drew the attention of the other contestants, and at the same time ignited their fighting spirit. Immediately, all the contestants followed behind me. They were neither afraid nor fearful of death. Then, when we were less than 50 meters from the monsters, I began summoning more zombie soldiers. In just moments, 100 zombie soldiers appeared on the battlefield, and their speed left the contestants in awe. Their damage and defensive capabilities were equally terrifying. When facing the monsters, a single full-force strike wiped out 15 of their health. From that, I calculated that the monsters' strength had increased by around 3,000. At the same time, based on the damage they endured, I estimated their physical constitution to be around 3,500. Although their health was relatively high, my corpse explosion skill would still deal significant damage. What I didn't expect was that, upon defeating these monsters, I would also gain a massive amount of experience. Therefore, I didn't hesitate to use the corpse explosion skill. Immediately, the loud sound of the explosion caught the attention of all the contestants. But before they could react to what was happening, powerful explosions continued to erupt one after another within the horde of monsters. All the monsters on the battlefield had been reduced to nothingness. Seeing this, the contestants were left stunned, speechless. However, this also drew the attention of the demon lord of hell within the blood. Immediately, more monsters emerged from the blood. In the blink of an eye, the contestants were once again surrounded by the creatures. Seeing this, I immediately understood that if I wanted to save everyone, I had to destroy the demon within the blood. Without hesitation, I threw a monster's corpse into the air, and as soon as it made contact with the blood, I unleashed my corpse explosion skill. At the same time, I unleashed the soul flame skill. Immediately, a wretched scream echoed across the battlefield. Impossible. How can there be a profession in this world capable of burning my soul? At that moment, the powerful individuals outside, who were repairing the Tower of Seven Emotions, sensed something. The old man's face grew pale with fear. The power of hell is rapidly weakening. Upon hearing this, Bai Shen immediately unleashed a terrifying surge of power. Could it be, have all the contestants in the tower perished? Observing the situation, the old man quickly explained, I can clearly sense that there is still a breath of humanity within the tower, but the breath of the demonic consciousness from hell seems to have weakened significantly. It appears to be gravely injured. Hearing these words, Bai Chen finally let out a sigh of relief. Next time, remember to speak clearly and decisively, so I don't worry myself to death. But you say the demon of hell in the tower is gravely injured. How could mere participants in their teens do that? Just then, a golden light suddenly shot up into the sky. To my astonishment, I discovered that my skill, Corpse Explosion, had leveled up. After enhancing it, the blast radius had expanded to 20 meters, and the damage surged to 150 health points. At that moment, dark monsters began to swarm toward me from behind. Seeing this, I could only smile. The timing couldn't be more perfect. It was just right for me to test my new Corpse Explosion skill. While these demons were eager to compete, the other participants were so frightened they might as well wet themselves. But I simply said, at this level, it's still not enough for me to unleash my full power. Just then, a group of level 16 beast mages appeared on my battlefield. Witnessing this, I summoned 10 skeletal warriors. That was more than enough to deal with these fragile mages. The outcome was even easier than I imagined. My skeletal warriors dispatched them in a single blow. Combined with my Corpse Explosion skill, dozens of monstrous corpses erupted simultaneously, creating a deadly zone with a radius of 100 meters. In an instant, hundreds of monsters perished in the blast, and my score soared by 6,000 points. The judges were left utterly astonished by this spectacle. Could it be that he annihilated over 100 monsters in one go? Had the summons grown this powerful? Now even his area of effect skills are this formidable. They immediately speculated that my profession had surpassed legendary status. It could even compete with other professions. This was the battlefield I found myself in, where the breath of death grew heavier, signaling the onset of the second phase. Shortly thereafter, 40 beast armies appeared simultaneously. This time, the monsters were divided into two types, high-health warriors and low-health archers. This coordination was nearly insurmountable for the other participants, but for me, it posed no challenge at all. The judges watched with bated breath, for in the history of the grand exam of the Empire, only one individual had ever surpassed the third stage of the combat arena. Therefore, they hoped I could surpass the third stage and break the historical record. This caused my score to skyrocket by an additional 20,000 points. Seeing this scene, the judges could no longer remain seated. Had he awakened his innate talent? If that's the case, then it truly is good news for humanity. If he can awaken a new talent in his second reincarnation, he will be a rare gem in this world, possessing two extraordinary gifts. Meanwhile, the challenge tower looms overhead in the imperial sky, faintly illuminated by a soft purple light. A dark beam of violet light shot toward the challenge tower. Simultaneously, a thunderous sound erupted from within the tower. Instantly, a massive golden hand extended outward. Witnessing this, the body of the demon avatar curled into a seductive smile. You cannot stop this. Just a moment later, two overwhelming forces collided. Although the demon avatar's clone was quickly grasped and crushed by the golden hand, the challenge tower found itself under siege by the encroaching power from the depths. The three powerful beings collaborating to evolve it soon discovered that it would take at least an hour. What troubled them most was the situation inside the tower for the candidates participating in the trial. At that moment, all the monsters on my battlefield vanished, and the contestants in the combat space were transported to the same location. Just as we were grappling with our confusion, a man claiming to be Bai Yan appeared above us. Seeing this, everyone gasped in shock. Bai Shen is here at the exam site. But the supervising teachers understood the gravity of this appearance. Something significant was certainly unfolding in the combat space. Just as expected, Bai Shen announced the harsh truth to all contestants. Demons from the abyss have infiltrated the battlefield with the primary goal of exterminating the talented candidates of the Huaxia Empire. We need an hour to restore the spatial rules, so you must protect yourselves for the next hour. The supervising teachers were immediately filled with dread. It was clear this was a conspiracy aimed at completely obliterating the future of the divine Xia Empire. At this point, most contestants were left paralyzed with fear, as the demons from the abyss were all above level 70, far beyond their capabilities. However, I was not overly concerned. If level 70 demons truly appeared in the combat space, we wouldn't need an hour. They would wipe us out in an instant. Bai Shen wouldn't have had to warn us. Perhaps the demons entering the battleground would be suppressed in power. One contestant pointed at the sky, exclaiming, "Look, a blood moon hangs ominously over the battlefield." Streams of dark power began to pour forth from the abyss. Seeing this, all warriors and classes surged forward, determined to intervene. "If you want to touch us, you'll have to step over the corpses of our comrades." At that, an infected orc warrior let out a ghastly laugh. Indeed, the talents of the divine Xia Empire are commendable. Too bad you won't make it through today. Seeing a monster at just level 19, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, they couldn't surpass the level cap of the combat space. But just as those words left my lips, a horde of corrupted monsters emerged from the blood. Witnessing this scene, Xiao Shui tightened her grip on my hand. "Can we really handle so many?" Hearing her words, I merely chuckled softly. Although it was a bit troublesome, if it was just at this level, I could manage. Notably, a contestant, merely at level 17 and yet to graduate, had managed to defeat a level 90 demon that even the judges couldn't conquer. In the end, my score crushed all opponents, and I was honored to be crowned the national champion. It turned out that at that moment, my skill corpse explosion had automatically upgraded during the battle, not only causing massive damage, but also doubling the explosion radius. At this moment, the corpses of the monsters on the battlefield were hurled into the air, soaring towards the crimson moon above. Seeing this, the demons from the abyss understood that their lingering souls were about to perish. "I will remember you when you descend into the abyss. I will tear your body into 100 pieces." Monsters that once required numerous attacks to defeat could now be sent to the eternal rest with just a single skill. In the blink of an eye, my level had risen. Observing this scene, the contestants were left in awe. This guy was using the demons from the abyss to hone his skills. Just as the words left my mouth, loud explosions erupted around me. In an instant, my body shattered into countless fragments. Simultaneously, the battlefield regained its normalcy. Some powerful beings outside the tower were also defeated, their consciousness consumed by the abyss. However, what left them astonished was no contestant was harmed. This was completely unexpected. They were desperate to understand what had transpired in the battleground. Thus, a few decided to escort the contestants back first, before returning to investigate the events that unfolded in the arena of combat. When Xiaoshui inquired about my situation, the phantom image of Bai Chen appeared in the battlefield. With the power from the abyss dissipated, everyone would be transported back to the square to await the results. However, as soon as we were brought back, several powerful figures began to investigate what had occurred in the arena. Revelation that I had single-handedly vanquished the demons from the abyss. My strength left several in shock. Who would have thought that this guy could turn the tide single-handedly? With a powerful profession and his intelligence, he had more than enough qualifications to become a top-tier powerhouse. The results showed that I had single-handedly defeated the Abyss Demon King. My power astonished many. Who would have imagined that this kid could reverse the situation alone? With a strong profession and his intellect, he was more than qualified to be a top master. Moments later, my name unexpectedly appeared on the screen in the square with a score of 34,605, standing at the top. Seeing this, the principal joyfully leaped up, exclaiming, "Lam Mokvu, this kid has truly brought glory to our school." In his excitement, he also noticed the remarkable achievement of Ha Tuiet Han, who stood in second place. Principals from other schools were consumed by envy. Moments later, the results for the remaining 3 participants were revealed. Witnessing this scene, Wang Zihao was abruptly taken aback. His own evaluation was shockingly low. If this continued, not only the Hoxie Academy, but even the top 20 schools of the empire would turn their backs on him. As these thoughts raced through his mind, he lost his composure. Why was he rated so poorly? Just a moment later, he was found guilty of breaking the examination rules and was expelled from the testing room. But just as the examiner was about to announce the results of this examination, suddenly, urgent news arrived from the empire, proclaiming that I had become the national champion of this examination. Upon hearing the news, the principal was left speechless, as if deprived of oxygen. His body seemed to float, as if ready to soar into the skies. Those around him expressed utter astonishment upon realizing I was a student from Yizhong, showering me with admiration and congratulations. Everyone was saying they would ensure their children would also study at Yizhong. However, when I returned home to share my joy with my grandmother, the principal arrived with a mysterious figure. This person emanated a suffocating aura. Sensing the danger, I immediately became alert, ready to confront any unexpected situation that might arise. I swiftly summoned the skeleton warrior to stand guard in front of me. Upon seeing this, the man quickly masked his reaction. His response was befitting of a national champion. Recognizing the visitor, I immediately bowed. It turned out that the mysterious figure was Bai Shen. He explained that he was here to discuss my enrollment at Hoxie Academy. During our conversation, he unexpectedly took note of the skeleton warrior I had summoned. Despite the summoning attribute only being rated at 250, how could I turn the tide in the battle space? Hearing this, doubts stirred within me. Could it be that others couldn't see the attributes of the skeleton after it had been enhanced by my talent? However, Bai Shen clearly didn't believe that with such attributes, I could defeat the Demon King. Therefore, he inquired about the type of talent I had awakened. The principal beside him, having overheard, was visibly excited and immediately asked if I had awakened a special talent. Faced with the question, I had no choice but to tell them that I had awakened the enhancement attribute, which could amplify all abilities. Upon hearing this, Bai Shen revealed that he was here for 2 reasons. The first was to present my reward at Hoxie Academy, and the second was to invite me to participate in a competition the day after tomorrow. However, I couldn't disclose the details of the competition, only mentioning that it was incredibly valuable. Hearing this, I immediately agreed to participate. I couldn't help but think about how the skeleton warrior had once trampled all the talents in the examination. yet now faced disdain from ordinary students in the academy. Just one glance from the skeleton warrior sent the man recoiling in fear. It turned out that right after I agreed to participate in the grand competition, Bai Shen had decided to grant me the reward for being the national top scorer. The reward included a card with 100,000 points, 2 skill scrolls, and notably, an exclusive entry into the God's Tower, a place renowned for its myriad of invaluable opportunities for those who managed to step inside. This was also the most coveted reward of all. Even Bai Shen reminded me to prepare thoroughly before entering the tower. After explaining everything, he escorted me to the Huajing Academy and even guided me to the boys' dormitory. I was astonished, for I had never heard of Bai Shen showing such concern for anyone. Moreover, my tone with him had been quite indifferent. He immediately deduced that I was indeed the national top scorer of this year's exam. He began to explain the dormitory fees and suggested that as a new student, I should save points by opting for a 4-person or 2-person dorm to live a bit more modestly. However, I disregarded that advice and chose a single dorm. The man, though surprised, did not deter me from my decision. Moments later, he led me to the single dormitory and pulled out his card reader. But upon seeing the balance on the card, he gasped in disbelief. Wow, over 100,000 points. I never imagined you would choose a single dorm without a second thought. Seeing his terrified expression, I quickly explained that this was the reward for being the national top scorer. The man, though appearing calm as he left the room, felt a deep wound in his heart. Since entering the academy, he had never earned a single coin of his own. Truly, the disparity between people could ignite a fire of envy in anyone. After that, I began meditating to restore my energy. It wasn't until the following morning, when someone knocked on my door, that I awoke from my trance. Upon opening the door, I was greeted by Ake, whom I hadn't seen in ages. So I gifted him a goblin gold bar as a reunion present, which left even the typically generous Ake quite astonished. It's important to note that this gold bar could forge a core item. If sold outside, it would fetch at least 1,000,000 gold coins. As for me, I was indifferent, as this treasure held little significance for my own needs. After completing the enrollment process, Ake took me to meet someone. Before long, we arrived at a classroom where we discovered that the individuals we were meeting were fellow students participating in this competition. Among them was Zhang Daodao from class 23, the captain of this group. Unfortunately, upon hearing that I was only at level 17, she could barely contain herself. Are you joking? Even if you're bringing someone, you can't just pick any random name. Ake sternly interjected, promptly informing her that I was the national top scorer. Yet, the man only grew more arrogant after hearing this. Never before had I seen someone so disdainful, as if the leaders of the entire nation were beneath us. To him, Chanlong was nothing. With that, he stepped closer, his voice cold as ice. Don't think that just because Bai Chen introduced you, you can act recklessly. In the Chanlong team, strength is what truly matters. If we fail this time, we might just take you along, but do us all a favor and keep your mouth shut. Don't drag us down, or I won't hesitate to show you my true colors. Hearing this, I sighed deeply within. I had thought that the Shajing Academy would be a great place, but to my surprise, they even charged 2 coins. Upon hearing this, the mage immediately erupted in fury, unleashing a searing flame skill. Seeing the situation escalate, Zhang Taotao swiftly intervened, halting the attack and warning the man to maintain his composure. Otherwise, you'll lose your chance to compete. At these words, the man finally calmed down, replying, "Don't worry, I know my limits. I'm just testing to see if this newbie can fill my brother's shoes." Zhang Taotao reminded him again not to cause trouble, especially since this was someone personally introduced by Bai Chen. If not, you'll lose your eligibility to compete. Only then did the man settle down. Rest assured, I have my own ways. I'm merely testing this rookie to see if he can take my brother's place. Zhang Taotao again cautioned him against stirring trouble, as this was someone Bai Chen had personally endorsed. There must be something special about him. If you continue to act so impulsively, you'll soon pay the price. Now, Ake had led me to a shop to do some shopping. After wrapping up everything, I returned to the dormitory, used the skill scroll, and received the basic skill of Curse Slow. This skill would reduce the speed of monsters within a 5-meter range by 5 points for 1 minute. After being enhanced by my innate talent, the skill's range expanded to 50 meters, and the slowing effect reached a staggering 50. The duration extended to 10 minutes. Although it might seem slightly inferior compared to summoning and attacking skills, this curse skill was still incredibly important. I truly hoped to learn more skills from other systems in the future. The next day, all members of the challenge team had gathered. Without delay, we stepped into the teleportation array, ready to embark on our trial. To our astonishment, the legendary Divine Tower rose majestically in the sky. With the power emanating from the tower, we were swiftly teleported to a small island known as Mermaid Isle. In front of us appeared a mission board. Upon touching it, I understood the mission of this trial: to defeat the final boss of the dungeon and obtain the Mermaid's Pearl. However, creatures like mermaids only have a probability of appearing in the nightmarish dungeon, and there are only 3 of them in total. This means that only the first 3 teams to conquer the dungeon can obtain a mermaid. Yet, upon seeing this mission, Jiang Dao Dao began to feel anxious. Mermaids can be used to craft special equipment, and each year, only 3 are released. Thus, every year, on Mermaid Island, not only the Divine Empire, but also geniuses from other empires flock to the scene. Consequently, the number of teams participating in this dungeon is no less than dozens. Our team's chances of obtaining a mermaid will diminish significantly. With those words, Dao Dao's expression began to turn serious. What worried me the most was the possibility of conflict between the Imperial teams. After all, such incidents have happened frequently in the past. Therefore, before setting off, Jiang Dao requested Moshi to buff everyone for safety. After receiving the enhancements, all my attributes increased by 30, and my skill damage rose by 20. I wondered if I could enhance the Skeletal Warrior. I immediately summoned a Skeletal Warrior and asked the mage to use the buff skill on him. The results showed that the buff skill could not be applied to the Skeletal Warrior. Witnessing this, the mage began to mockingly comment on how even the summoned creature was as useless as its master. It seemed that the summoned creature was just as ineffective as its owner. However, just as he finished speaking, the Skeletal Warrior emitted a chilling aura that made the man step back in fear. By the time he reacted to salvage his pride, he was halted by Jiang Dao Dao. He knew all too well. He could not be my opponent. The moment the Skeletal Warrior turned its gaze toward him, he felt the breath of death looming. Then, Jiang Dao Dao led us toward the dungeon entrance, but we soon encountered monsters blocking our path. Fortunately, these monsters were not of a high level, and everyone began to clear them out while advancing. However, as we approached the island's center, the level of the monsters grew increasingly formidable. At this rate, it would take at least 3 hours to reach the dungeon entrance. Therefore, Jiang Dao Dao devised a plan. Miao Wu would take charge of controlling the monsters along the way, while the others would simply charge ahead. As a result, we found ourselves left behind by other teams, with an ever-increasing number of monsters in our path. Even bird language admitted it was becoming uncontrollable. The higher-level monsters were ahead of us, and while everyone was feeling frustrated, I stepped forward and declared, "Let me handle the monster clearing." Entering a challenging dungeon for the first time, we were already beset by the talents of the Empire, yet I had only summoned less than 1/10 of the Skeletal Warriors. This was enough to deter a group of geniuses from approaching. In truth, as our team was making its way toward the island's central entrance, we had encountered numerous high-level monsters that blocked our path, causing our progress to lag behind that of the other teams. Thus, I decided to take on the task of dealing with the monsters along the way. But upon hearing these words, Huang Mao immediately retorted, "What can a level 17 like you do? I haven't seen you lift a finger along the way. It's best if you stay behind the women." Jiang Dao Dao, although aware he was just trying to mock her, couldn't help but ask, "Do you actually have a way to deal with the monsters?" Hearing this, I didn't reply and simply raised my hand to summon a Skeletal Warrior. Seeing this, Jiang Dao Dao immediately realized, "That's right. You can use the skeletal warrior to attract the monster's aggression. As soon as he finished speaking, the skeletal warrior charged straight toward the group of monsters, while the others rushed together toward the center of the island. It was only when we reached the safe area that everyone stopped. As the team leader, Jiang Dao Dao immediately thanked me. However, Huang Mao criticized me. You should have done that from the start, otherwise we would have reached the dungeon entrance long ago. Hearing that, I turned back and warned him that this would be the last time. Unexpectedly, he pushed even further, saying, even if your summoned creatures can attract monsters, it doesn't change the fact that you're useless. Just as I was about to teach him a lesson, Miao Wu suddenly shouted, telling everyone to run. We saw a group of monsters suddenly appear ahead, rushing towards us. Jiang Dao Dao immediately realized that these monsters had been summoned by a person belonging to the legendary foreign profession, the Divine Summoner. Just as the man launched the spear in his hand, it instantly transformed into terrifying ancient gods. Jiang Dao Dao immediately understood that he was doing this to stop us from ascending the mountain. However, it wasn't just our team that was affected. Even the teams from the Divine Xia Empire were also hindered. As he was leaving, the man didn't forget to sneer. If you can't handle it, use the quest to teleport out. The mermaid's tear belongs to us. The great mighty kingdom saw me preparing to summon and could only place their hopes on me. However, a single skeletal warrior could only attract 1 to 3 monsters. But just as everyone was almost in despair, I summoned another skeletal warrior. Shortly after, a third warrior appeared as well. Seeing this, everyone continuously praised me. Yet, Hong Mao still seemed completely indifferent. Before long, everyone started charging up the mountain. The man, pleased at first, was now taken aback. How could these monsters, capable of delaying them for hours, be so swiftly outrun? Thus, he ordered the archers to lie in ambush on the mountain to block our path. Immediately, countless swordsmen surged forward. Seeing this unfolding chaos, I positioned the skeletal warriors to shield our group. While the team formation was thrown into disarray by this assault, panic began to spread among the members, who thought it best to form a line in the center. Only the strongest team can confront the outsiders. Upon hearing this, a brilliant idea sparked in Huang Mao's mind. He immediately informed Jiang Dao Dao that he would join another team, and if he got kicked out, he would remain behind. Confidence surged within him like a roaring tide. He thought Jiang Dao Dao would surely kick him out to keep himself safe. But just as he was preparing to laugh at my expense, Jiang Dao Dao told him to leave. Huang Mao, hearing this, was left in disbelief. You're actually letting a weakling like me, at level 17, kick you out of the team. Don't you want to enter the Founding Academy? As much as I desire it, as a celestial knight, I have my own convictions. Hearing this, Huang Mao reluctantly exited the team. I hope you won't regret this decision. As for me, to prevent others from easily abandoning me, I declared that I could lead them through the dungeon. At first, Jiang Dao Dao was skeptical, but seeing Aka's trust in me, he gradually began to believe as well. Thus, we set forth towards our goal. But upon reaching the mountain's peak, as soon as we reached the top of the mountain, we discovered 2 armies standing on either side of the waterfall. One side consisted of foreigners who continuously threatened, saying that anyone who approached the side entrance of the Divine Xia Empire would die. However, I paid no attention and proceeded straight toward the entrance. Behind the army of the Divine Xia Empire, I saw a leader charging forward as well. Seeing this scene, Hong Mao just gave a cold smile. A bunch of fools walking to their deaths. Immediately, the foreigners acted, summoning the ancient gods. At the same time, hundreds of swordsmen were about to descend upon us. Sensing the danger, I hurriedly raised my shield to protect everyone. Yet he completely ignored my action. My right hand slowly rose, and in an instant, shadows surged like a tidal wave from the ground. In the blink of an eye, rows upon rows of skeletal warriors obliterated the swordsmen. The skeletal warriors could fell a deity with a single swing. Seeing this, everyone was astonished, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before them. They finally understood why the deity had introduced me. Even the outsiders stood in stunned silence, bewildered by this bizarre profession that could summon such fearsome skeletal warriors. Even the summoned deities could not achieve this feat. While they were still reeling from shock, I reached the entrance of the dungeon. To avoid any further entanglement with them, I decided to select the nightmare difficulty, and instantly, our figures vanished. The outsiders, defeated, gritted their teeth in frustration. At this moment, we had entered the dungeon, and while a few were discussing strategies to eliminate the monsters, a notification board suddenly appeared overhead, announcing the monster extermination. Before they could react, I began instructing the skeletal warriors to seek out more monsters. Aka immediately commanded the three behind him to stay closely behind. I planned to summon dozens of skeletal warriors to pave the way, just like in the Goblin King dungeon, while the others could simply follow in awe and gather experience. In less than 5 minutes, we had slain a colossal monster in a valley. I spotted a gigantic superior monster lurking in a lake, its attributes surpassing even that of the Goblin King, known for his unparalleled defense. Jiang Dao Dao prepared to step forward to block it, but I shook my head, signaling him to stay back. I then summoned branches, and my skeletal warriors surged upward. However, its speed was too great, my warriors couldn't even brush against a single hair. Fortunately, San's slow skill activated just in time, significantly reducing the serpent monster's speed. Thus, the skeletal warriors easily climbed onto its body. In moments, its form was covered in swords. As it neared death, it attempted to use poison to turn the tide, but the invisible skeletal warriors were unscathed. Finally, it fell to a single arrow piercing through its head. As the serpent was vanquished, a surge of experience flooded into everyone. The speed at which this monster was taken down was nothing short of astonishing. We pressed onward through the dungeon, and soon, a magnificent palace emerged before us. This was undoubtedly the lair of the final boss, the human and the queen. But the patrolling monsters outside swarmed like ants. Moreover, all these monsters were enhanced elite creatures. Witnessing this, Jiang Dao Dao began to feel anxious. Yet for me, this was merely an opportunity for experience, so I summoned my skeletal warriors to charge at them. However, this time, my skeletal warriors finally encountered a setback. Confronting the Mermaid Queen, whose attributes were incredibly high, I lost 12 skeletal warriors with just one strike. Thus, I decided to summon my skeletal warriors for a second time. It turned out we had indeed entered the palace of the Mermaid Queen. However, surrounding us were hundreds of enhanced elite monsters. While some were still fumbling for strategies to deal with these beasts, I summoned my undead warriors to charge into the fray. The sounds of battle immediately drew the attention of the merfolk army. In the blink of an eye, they unleashed their skills and charged toward us. Seeing this, I commanded all my undead warriors to unleash their rampage fist immediately, followed by activating the corpse explosion skill. In an instant, notifications of monster kills flooded the screen. Those who witnessed this spectacle were left in utter amazement. Oh my, what kind of powerful skill is this? Experiencing such overwhelming strength for the first time was simply exhilarating. As all the monsters were defeated, the palace doors creaked open, revealing the true forms of the human and the queen. I noticed their intellect attributes exceeded a staggering 5,000. As they appeared, Aka and the others wore blank expressions. I immediately realized that the human and the queen carried an enigmatic allure, so I used the awakening spell to rouse them. However, as their clarity returned, their cognitive abilities temporarily diminished. At this moment, the momentum of the human and the queen surged dramatically. I realized they were preparing to unleash their skills, so I commanded the undead warriors to intercept their magic. The human and the queen were interrupted, their trifork staff halted, as they began to gather their strength. In the next instant, the trifork erupted like a tempest, striking down the undead warriors who immediately bled out. Witnessing this, Jiang Dao Dao urgently demanded that we amplify her power. She intended to charge forth against the monster, hoping to create an opportunity for the undead warriors to level up. But I firmly stated, no need, and without hesitation, I raised my hand and cast a binding curse upon the human and the queen. In the blink of an eye, the curse ensnared them. However, as soon as the human and the queen activated their skills, the delayed effect vanished without a trace. That strike cost me 12 undead warriors. Seeing this, Jiang Dao Dao immediately urged me to summon them back, insisting they should join the fight. Yet, I raised my hand, calling forth even more undead warriors. In no time, hundreds of them rose from the earth. The sight left everyone in shock. After a relentless battle, the human and the queen quickly found themselves in a vulnerable position. With brutal strikes raining down from the skeletal warriors, she was brought to her knees, crying out in despair. Thus, the first mermaid's tear fell into our hands. However, just as everyone was celebrating the success of this mission, I turned to Aka and asked if there was any cooling skincare product available. This left everyone utterly astonished. Were you really planning to collect all 3 mermaids' tears? Soon after, we escaped from the dungeon. The citizens of the Hua Kingdom witnessed our exit and began to take defensive stances. In less than half an hour, they had retreated, perhaps feeling they could not defeat us. Meanwhile, Lam Chun stood by, relentlessly mocking them. In contrast, the compatriots of the Divine Empire comforted us for returning safely. What no one expected was that Aka began using the cooling skincare product right in front of everyone. Before anyone could react, Aka and I stepped back into the dungeon, while the other 3 decided to stay outside, not wanting to hinder us. To avoid lengthy nights filled with dreams, I immediately activated performance mode and, drawing from my previous experience, devised a tactical plan. In less than 5 minutes, I had eliminated the mini-boss. Moreover, I had concentrated my efforts to wipe out all the elite monsters surrounding the palace. After my previous battle with the Mermaid Queen, I had developed a better strategy. As soon as he stepped out of the palace, I unleashed the Curse of Binding and simultaneously attacked the surrounding monsters. The skill Exploding Corpse was activated with an unending roar of explosions. The queen was instantly reduced to ashes. He could never have imagined that a final boss like him would leave this realm without even uttering a single word, heading off to enjoy a bento box instead. This time, not only did we acquire a pearl of mermaid tears, but we also obtained 2 silver daggers and a tome of silver magic. Simultaneously, Aka leveled up by 1 rank. This unexpected boost ignited a spark of excitement in Aka, who usually despised training, prompting him to eagerly request that I open the next dungeon. When they saw us arrive in less than 10 minutes, Jiang Dao Dao and the others were once again taken aback. Clearly, Lin Mook's power exceeded our wildest imaginations. This was the second time Aka and I had ventured into a dungeon, and this time, our completion time was significantly faster than before. As a result, 3 pearls of mermaid tears fell into our possession. When we were transported back to the people of Huaguo, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. It was truly a riot. You didn't even manage to slay a single monster before you ran out. Unfortunately, the Guardian's time had expired. But just as those words left my lips, the light at the dungeon's entrance began to fade. Everyone understood that this signaled the dungeon's impending disappearance. Only the 3 pearls of mermaid tears had been taken, and we had barely managed to enter 3 times. Could it be that all the pearls of mermaid tears were in their hands? Realizing this, the people of Huaguo immediately surrounded us, forcing us to surrender the pearls. Meanwhile, our fellow citizens from the Divine Xia Empire quickly joined the fray. If the pearls of mermaid tears belonged to us, we couldn't let the people of Huaguo snatch them away. At that moment, the battle between the Divine Xia Empire and Huaguo officially commenced. The Divine Summoner from Huaguo struck first, conjuring 2 deities that unleashed an overwhelming pressure. The sheer force left the weaker ones gasping for breath. Seeing this dire situation, I immediately unleashed a soul flame, a vivid azure blaze that surged toward the 2 deities. Upon contact, they collapsed instantly. Witnessing this, the Divine Summoner seethed with rage. He swiftly pulled out a capture card, and as it burned away, a colossal axe-wielding creature emerged in the sky. It was his summoned angel, the Axe God. In the next moment, the Axe God charged into the crowd. However, no one from the Divine Xia Empire could breach his defenses. Observing this, I commanded the undead warriors to unleash a frenzied assault on him. In an instant, he was obliterated. Everyone who witnessed this was left in shock, while I stood dumbfounded, unable to believe that he was so weak. Even if the summoned angel was annihilated, the man still had to endure the backlash. Seeing this, I commanded my undead warriors to focus all their strength on him. Terrified, the man instantly mounted the deity's back to escape. Witnessing this, the citizens of the Hua Kingdom lost all their fighting spirit. After all, their strongest legendary profession had been defeated. This was my first time entering a dungeon, and I had shattered the record that others had failed to achieve in 3 years, catching everyone's attention. Yet, I remained unsatisfied with my leveling speed. Because I had received the request to enter the Academy of Innovation, the first requirement was to reach level 30. It turned out that after I defeated the citizens of the Hua Kingdom, the remaining people had lost their fighting spirit. When I summoned 5 more undead warriors to join the battle, the cowards immediately fled in terror. Thanks to his guidance, all the citizens of the Hua Kingdom began to retreat from the mountaintop. Witnessing this, the citizens of the Divine Empire were instantly uplifted. Just look at how those cowards, once so arrogant, now wallowed in shame. Meanwhile, Lin Zhen beside me felt deep regret. If only he hadn't left the team, he might have completed the challenge. When Jiang Dao Dao shattered the teleportation token, we returned to the Academy of Hajing. Before long, I received a message from Bai Shen asking me to meet him in the administrative office. It turned out that Bai Shen had reviewed the video recording of this challenge mission. It turns out that the tear of a mermaid can significantly enhance the success rate of awakening one's innate talent. Since I defeated the Hua Kingdom and obtained the mermaid's tear, I decided to fulfill one of your requests. After saying this, he inquired about what I desired. Instantly, my thoughts drifted to my sister, who had mysteriously disappeared, so I asked him about Charlotte. Bai Shen, upon hearing this, replied that he could not disclose any information about her because she had enrolled in the Academy of Innovation at the beginning of the year, and all student information there was kept confidential. Even I couldn't break the rules to reveal their information. Thus, he could only tell me that to find my sister, I needed to enter the Academy of Innovation. After that, he sent me the requirements for admission. If I couldn't meet these, I could propose another request. After pondering for a while, I ultimately chose a cooling skincare product because that would allow me to level up quickly and rush into the Academy of Innovation. Bai Shen agreed right away, but with the condition that I had to reach level 20 and complete a mission first. With that, he handed me a crystal and informed me that this was the teleportation token to the dungeon. If I was in a hurry, I could go train there beforehand. As soon as the token illuminated, I activated the teleportation and instantly found myself in a grand pass. Inside, many people were searching for my team. I glanced through the admission requirements for the Creative Academy. The first condition was to reach level 30, followed by clearing the level 30 Hell instance, and finally, a contribution point of at least 1,000. As I pondered how to earn contribution points, a golden-haired girl suddenly interrupted my thoughts from behind. She recognized me as a newcomer to the instance and offered to share all the information about the palace. With a swift gesture, she pointed out that only 100 points were needed. Without hesitation, I transferred the points to her. The girl was overjoyed upon receiving the points and began to introduce me to the palace. There were a total of 95 instances, each distinguished by different colors corresponding to their respective levels. Each instance had its own completion record. Creating a new record would yield rewards. At the moment, a mysterious structure built from 5 magical gems stood as the central mission hub here. After listening to her introduction, I still hadn't received any notification about the contribution points, so I asked her how to earn them. The golden-haired girl was taken aback. She didn't expect a rookie to be so eager to earn contribution points. If she continued to reveal methods for earning points, it would involve participating in challenges and missions organized by the Academy. However, truly acquiring contribution points was exceptionally difficult. Missions issued by the Academy were often completed very quickly, as joining the Academy required a substantial amount of contribution points. Before she could finish speaking, my bracelet buzzed with a notification. 50 contribution points had been transferred to my account. I was officially participating in the mission challenge. The accumulated points came from challenge missions in the instances. Those around me looked at me in disbelief upon hearing this. After thanking the golden-haired girl, I placed my hand on the image of the mage and began selecting a mission, ultimately settling on a level 17 task. The instance, the mutated forest, had held the record at over 58 minutes for 3 consecutive years. Seeing this, I immediately chose the nightmare difficulty. However, when people saw me selecting the level 17 instance, they began to doubt my capabilities. They thought I was a master, but it turned out I was just a rookie. Perhaps I had just received points and not contribution points. As soon as I entered the instance, I summoned a skeletal warrior to eliminate the smaller monsters while I searched for the boss to save time. Before long, I discovered traces of the boss near a lake. Disturbed, the mutated monster roared and leaped out of the water. Seeing this, I immediately summoned the skeletal warrior to attack it. However, I was unprepared for its terrifying defensive skill. Even the frenzied strikes of the skeletal warrior barely inflicted any damage. Realizing this, I understood why the completion record had remained unbroken. But that defense was nothing more than an illusion to me. Saying that, I hurled a soul fire towards it, and upon contact, it let out a wretched scream. I don't know when it exposed its most vulnerable abdomen. At that moment, the bone warrior began to attack it. It lay on the ground, causing me to gain 35 experience points. At the same time, in the subtitle hall, the bell rang. The ruby in the middle of the hall also lit up. Soon after, I broke the record for crossing the mutated forest. When people saw this scene, everyone was incredulously surprised. I broke the team's record alone. At that moment, I was kicked out of the subtitle. The bracelet announced that I had broken the records of 1,005 points. Seeing the reward for breaking the record, I immediately made a decision. I reset all the dungeon records. But when I wanted to enter the level 20 Spider Den dungeon, I discovered that the entry requirement was level 18, while I was only level 17. With no other choice, I went back and continued resetting the mutant forest. After clearing the dungeon, my level finally reached 18. I broke the record in just 24 minutes, and then I focused on the record of passing through the spider hole, followed by the terrifying skeleton warriors who finally upgraded to the level of history. The former Bronzebone warriors have now evolved into silver-armored warriors, and their attributes have been significantly enhanced. Once I passed the upgrade to level 28, I turned my attention to level 20 Spider Hole, a record that no one has broken in 3 years. I'm going to break it today. Without hesitation, I chose the nightmare level difficulty. In the blink of an eye, I appeared in a dark cave. I used Soulfire as a lighting tool. In order to save time, I directly summoned the Bone Warrior to explore the road, but the speed of my discovery surprised me. The Bone Warrior almost immediately encountered the monster at the crossroads. It seems that these huge and terrifying spiders are my next monsters. I immediately threw a pile of soulfires at them. In an instant, hundreds of spiders were burned to death. The experience is equivalent to 20 copper-level monsters. I didn't expect this to be an ideal place for promotion, but now the bone warriors around me are all entangled by small spiders. Although the damage caused by small spiders to bone warriors can be ignored, they cannot withstand hundreds of spiders biting people at the same time. When I was about to bring the bone warrior back to the summoning space, I found too many small spiders attached there to retrieve them, so I used the body explosion technique directly. The small spiders on the bone warrior disappeared. After about 10 minutes of exploration, I finally found Spider King Boss. This is the first instance that made me feel besieged. I won't let you down. Soon, I killed Spider King and increased my experience by 80. However, due to the little spider stretching the time too long, I was unable to break the instance record. Meanwhile, everyone in the hall was watching me like a joke. Time had surpassed the record, yet he still did not appear. Perhaps he had perished inside. Hearing this, the blonde girl couldn't help but feel anxious. But just a moment later, I emerged from the instance. She hurried over to comfort me, but as she began to speak, I announced that I had cleared it. The girl was struck as if by lightning. She could hardly believe that I had done it alone, while the entire team of 5 couldn't. Moreover, looking at my calm demeanor, it seemed that this was not my limit. Meanwhile, I was calculating the upgrade efficiency of the dungeon. Even though the experience here was 3 times that of the mutated forest, the time required could refresh the mutated forest up to 4 times. So, I asked the blonde girl if there was an instance with better upgrade efficiency. She thought for a moment and informed me of an instance that perfectly matched my requirements, the level 25 instance, Desert Tyrant. This instance not only required level 20 for the challenge, but could also accommodate a team of 40. In an instant, I felt a surge of excitement. It seemed I had to quickly level up to 20. So I bid her farewell and stepped back into the spider cave to break the instance record. This time, I didn't choose to eliminate all the spiders, but after defeating the boss, my experience soared to 70. At the same time, the bell in the instance hall rang again. Everyone gasped, certain that I had indeed broken the record once more. Moreover, she suspected I might be a naturally gifted awakened being, but beside her, Ling Zhen scoffed, claiming that awakening was merely luck. He was just an ordinary student who had completed the major exam thanks to a little connection with Bai Shen. Did he receive some kind of treasure fallout? Without it, even if he had 10 lives, he couldn't pass the nightmare instance. However, as soon as he finished speaking, I stepped out from the instance and my clearance achievement was displayed. Clearly, I had shattered the instance record, but upon seeing Ling Zhen, the one who had repeatedly troubled me, my murderous intent could no longer be restrained. I had endured enough. Did he truly think I wouldn't dare to kill him within the academy? The aura of death radiating from me made Ling Zhen feel the chilling grip of fear. He had just been self-satisfied, now trembling in fear to the point of being unable to speak. Noticing this, I had no intention of wasting time with him. At this moment, the most important thing was to reach level 20 and challenge the Desert Tyrant instance. Just then, the prominent figures in the Hatan Academy gathered together. Before them was the video of my recent challenge in the Spider Cave. Bai Shen remarked with a satisfied expression that even though he had seen my match in the major exam before, watching it again still left him in shock. Beside him, the old man with white hair tapped his beard thoughtfully. He nodded in satisfaction, then turned to Bai Chen and asked, "What innate talent have I awakened?" Bai Chen replied honestly, "It's an enhancement talent. But just how much it enhances, I can't say for sure. After all, it's someone else's private matter, and I don't want to pry too much into it. He would undoubtedly enter the Divine Light Academy in the future." After all, his older sister was already at the Divine Light Academy under the tutelage of that old man. Upon hearing this, the old man with white hair seemed to grasp the implication and remarked, "It seems humanity is about to gain 2 more stars." On the other side, I once again stood before the Spider King. After defeating it, my rank finally reached level 20. Simultaneously, all my stats had significantly improved. Not only had my summoning space increased from 120 to over 200, but my frequently used summoning skills were also upgraded. Therefore, I hurriedly summoned the enhanced Bone Warrior. In the next moment, the Bone Warrior clad in armor appeared. Their stats had surged from 2,000 to 4,000. Their frenzied attack skills had also leveled up. However, the mental energy required to summon them had increased as well. It seemed the time had come for me to upgrade some equipment and potions. Thus, I headed to the trading shop. First, I exchanged all the dropped equipment from dungeons for a low-tier skill book. After that, I went to the points shop to buy high-tier gear. Before long, I stopped at a long sword. Additionally, there was a spirit cloak and a ring. Equipping them all at once would activate the set effect. A complete set would grant an additional 1,600 spirit points. Just as I was pondering whether to purchase them, the commotion nearby caught my attention. What kind of weapon is that? It doesn't even have real attributes. What a piece of junk, and they dare to sell it for 50,000 points. But when I saw the attributes of this sickle, I was stunned. It was the only specialized weapon in the world for the Death Mage class. Finally, I had found a weapon of my own, yet it had sat in the grocery store for 50 years without anyone showing interest. Lacking any attributes led people to think it was just an ordinary sickle. The price of 50,000 points made people curse. How can they sell a worthless item with no attributes for 50,000 Nang? But without hesitation, I bought it. The moment I touched the sickle, I felt the power of the god of death. At the same time, I realized that this was one of the developing weapons of the death set. It not only allowed me to summon the soul of a general to lead the skeletal army, but also absorbed souls from the abyss. I could gain experience points to grow, and after reaching a certain level, I could even unlock new skills. When I returned to the dormitory, I immediately used the primary skill scroll. With a burst of brilliant golden light emanating from the scroll, I successfully awakened the new skill Bone Armor of the Sea. With the enhancement from my innate abilities, I can now grant a staggering 1,000 points of defense to my physical form. Simultaneously, the elemental resistance of both myself and my summoned creatures has doubled, lasting for an incredible 50 minutes. This is truly magnificent. It's the salvation for my only weaknesses, my frail bloodline and poor defense. And now I have learned my next skill. This next skill took me by surprise, for I have acquired the special ability to summon a bone mage. Without hesitation, I activated this skill, and in the blink of an eye, a skeletal figure clad in a dark cloak appeared before me. With this newfound power, my skeletal minions now possess the ability to attack from a distance. The next day, I headed to the academic office to find Bai Shen and accept my mission. Upon seeing me, Bai Shen was astonished to note how quickly I had leveled up to 20. Compared to my former self, I had progressed remarkably fast. He quickly composed himself and continued speaking. The mission is quite straightforward. Venture into the level 20 dungeon, known as the Desert Tyrant, and within the designated time, eliminate the boss and retrieve the tyrant's core. However, with a dungeon that accommodates up to 40 players, the difficulty is undoubtedly significant. If you can bring back the tyrant's core within 3 days, I will reward you with a primary cooling protection piece. It's worth noting that this cooling protection is incomparable to the divine dungeons, where top-tier dungeons can have cooldowns lasting months. When you encounter that type of replica, that's when the true effects of the cooling skincare products come into play. The reason I give you 3 days is that after that, the school will hold the opening ceremony. I hope you can return before then. After I left, the old man with silver hair slowly stepped out of the room. Are you certain he can bring back the tyrant's core in 3 days? Knowing his character, I don't even need to guess he will undoubtedly attempt it solo. Remember when you were at level 30, struggling to return after a solo run. Hearing this, Bai Shen couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. At this moment, I had arrived at the entrance of the Desert Tyrant dungeon. Those gathered around exclaimed, "Oh my, does he really want to break the record for this dungeon?" As I approached the dungeon's teleport gate, the information about the team that had completed the dungeon flashed before me. It was the 40-member team from the Flying Dragon Academy. Just as I was about to step into the dungeon, a girl with golden hair boldly approached and asked, "Are you preparing to enter the Desert Tyrant to level up?" I then recounted my mission to retrieve the tyrant's core. Upon hearing this, the girl was instantly taken aback. That's the item dropped when defeating the final boss. It can be crafted into an incredibly powerful piece of jewelry, the Tyrant's Medal. Moreover, this item only drops once a year, the last time was 2 years ago. At that moment, she suddenly realized something was amiss. Wait, where are your teammates? Are you really planning to solo the Desert Tyrant? It's important to note that back then, only one genius from the Flying Dragon Academy could complete this dungeon, so how could you, alone, hope to defeat the final boss? Just as she finished speaking, a man clad in golden armor stepped out from the crowd. Behind him stood a formidable team. It turned out they were students from the Bakley Academy, preparing to break the Dark Lord's dungeon record with an arsenal of golden gear. Seeing this, I realized I had to act fast. So, under the watchful eyes of everyone, I stepped through the dungeon's teleport gate. The man leading the group shot me a disdainful glance. Daring to enter the Dark Lord's desert alone? Aren't you just a rookie at the academy? He then began to command his teammates to enter the dungeon, while I, upon entering, immediately summoned a skeletal warrior to scout for the map. Before long, the skeletal warrior encountered a monster. A bizarre, withered tree surged up from the ground, catching the warrior off guard, nearly dragging it down. A withered tree with attributes appeared, and in that moment, I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of this dungeon. Even the attributes of this minor creature rivaled those of the dungeon's leaders. If it weren't for the skeletal warrior having leveled up to silver, it would have been quite a challenge. After 2.5 long seconds, the desert's cursed tree was finally vanquished, surprising me with the experience gained, amounting to hundreds of thousands. To ensure my safety, I quickly activated the Bone Sea Armor for defense and continued to explore the dungeon. Soon, I discovered an oasis ahead. I knew this could be a monster hotspot, so I sent the skeletal warrior to investigate a bit. However, before it could reach the oasis, it was ambushed by a scorpion. But my skeletal warrior was no pushover. With a wild strike, it swiftly took down the creature. Yet, the noise of the battle attracted more scorpions immediately. At that moment, I noticed a peculiar fruit growing abundantly on the trees. So, I quickly summoned more skeletal warriors to harvest the fruit. Not long after, they returned with the bounty. I discovered that these fruits could restore mental energy, and after trying one, my mental energy rapidly rejuvenated. Unfortunately, these fruits could only be stored for 5 minutes after harvesting. Thus, this place could only serve as a temporary battlefield. Fortunately, I could practice my newly learned skills here. So I took advantage of the fruit's restorative effects and began summoning bone mages continuously. In just 2.5 short hours, my summoning skill for bone mages reached level 20. The once ragged mages transformed into silver elemental mages, now wielding 4 elements: fire, water, ice, and earth, with a mental power of 8,000. Their damage potential was immense. Seeing the monsters on the battlefield, a sly smile crept across my face. I wondered if the skeletal warriors I had just slain were feeling pleased. Now was the time for revenge. To conquer a dungeon so vast that even the Academy's geniuses struggled with it, all on my own, it was truly a piece of cake. The amount of time I invested left the powerful figures in the Academy astonished and drove all the students crazy. In fact, just as I captured the dungeon's final fortress, the ultimate boss, Tyrant Shi-2, appeared. As a result, in less than 2 minutes, I lost nearly 30 bone warriors. This is the first time I have felt the pressure of the boss. In order to alleviate the burden on the skeleton warriors, I used the deceleration curse on the tyrant, but I didn't expect the restrained tyrant to still be able to use the sound attack skill and immediately destroy 14 skeleton warriors. Even my bone armor couldn't last 2 seconds before being shattered. Before I could react, the tyrant once again used his furious leap, directly targeting me. If I'm hit, there's a chance he'll lose all my remaining bone warriors. Therefore, I quickly ignited his soul to stop him. Fortunately, this blow cut off the tyrant's skills and knocked him down to the ground. The skeleton warrior took this opportunity to counterattack. The skeleton warrior surrounded his entire body, and I kept firing at him. In addition, with the decreasing elemental attacks of the bone mage, the tyrant's physique began to rapidly decline. In no time, he closed his eyes. Compared to the equipment he was about to drop, the 3 pieces of equipment he dropped were all golden, and the tyrant's heart also fell. At this point, my level had reached 21, and I discovered that the previous level 20 skill had also increased to level 21 along with my level. Seeing this, I didn't hesitate to exclaim, could it be that when you upgrade a skill to its maximum, it will level up along with you? If that's the case, I'll need to reset the Desert Tyrant once more to upgrade my other skills to the maximum. At the same time, 6 clear bells rang out in the dungeon. Everyone in the dungeon was astonished because the 6 bells represent the completion of a large dungeon. The nephew of the Dean of Bailishang Academy has a new record in the crowd. The nephew of the Dean of Bailishang Academy is very excited. It seems that this record was created by our Bailishang Academy, but a man next to him disagrees. Remember that Lin Moyu also entered the Desert Tyrant, and it's possible that he broke the record in the dungeon. Upon hearing these words, Bailishang was immediately unhappy. Which academy is Lin Moyu from? He dares to compete with us for the record in Baili Academy. A fellow student next to him is coming soon. Tell him about my solo dungeon. After listening, he laughed very hard. Does he want me to die laughing? Challenge the big dungeon alone. 40 people really don't know the world. The academy students snorted coldly upon hearing this. Could it be that a single person cannot enter a large dungeon? Ew. He is the one who set 2 dungeon records. Just as Bai Li Sheng was about to say something, news about the drop of the tyrant's heart spread throughout the dungeon. Seeing this, everyone was extremely astonished. Oh heavens, the tyrant heart has fallen. Truly, the one from the Bakli Academy has shattered records. After all, to defeat a tyrant with formidable combat prowess within an hour is nearly impossible. This shocking news twisted Bakli Thin's face into a grimace. Yet moments later, he was slapped hard across the face. In the sky, a message illuminated the darkness. I have set a new record for the desert tyrant in 14 hours, 11 minutes, and 43 seconds. At that moment, I stepped through the teleportation gate, and everyone gazed at my figure, unable to calm their astonishment. At this juncture, Bakli Than approached me, his expression one of embarrassment. You are Lum Makvu, daring to compete with the Bakli Academy. Truly, you know not the meaning of life and death. But in my mind, I was solely focused on finding Bakthun to relay my mission, completely ignoring what he was saying. Therefore, I brushed him off and left the dark realm. Soon after, Bakthun received my call, but he misunderstood my purpose for coming, thinking I sought his help to find my teammates. Instead, I informed him that the tyrant heart was now in my possession. Upon hearing this, Bakthun's calm demeanor shattered. Could it be that you've truly set a new record for the desert tyrant? However, he regained his composure and asked me where I was. As soon as I revealed my location, I received a reward for my record-breaking feat with the desert tyrant. I earned 5,000 points and 30 contribution points. Just then, I felt a wave of spatial energy behind me. In an instant, Bakthun and I appeared at the home of the white-haired elder. It turned out he was the master of justice, Manhwa. Following that, Bakthun instructed me to retrieve the tyrant's heart. When the two of them saw me holding the tyrant's heart, they were both taken aback. After some inquiries, they learned that I not only soloed the dungeon, but also did so in just 14 hours. Once more, the two exchanged stunned looks. Then, Manhwa, with a cunning smile, glanced at Bakthun. "Oh Bakht, it seems it's time to fulfill your promise to him." Bakthun, a bit disheartened, tossed me a gift. Without needing to say more, he promptly informed me of a way to swiftly enter the Creative Academy, to venture into the primordial battlefield, and collect contributions. However, typically only individuals at level 40 and above are qualified to enter. I can help you get into the primordial battlefield first, but the task is to bring me back certain items, he added. Looking at the list, I couldn't help but hesitate. Everything had the word dragon on it. It was obvious that these were not low-tier monsters that could drop such items. Seeing my concern, Bakthun quickly reassured me. Don't worry, they're not real dragons, just a type of beastmen who proclaim themselves as dragons. Essentially, they're no different from the tyrant, merely misguided souls lost in the desert. So, are you interested in accepting this mission? Without hesitation, I accepted the task. This way, I could earn more contribution points. However, as I left, Manhwa expressed concern that allowing me into the primordial battlefield might pose a threat to my life. However, Bai Chen believed that if I could tackle the major dungeon alone, it would be a valuable opportunity for me to train. Meanwhile, the team from the Bakli Academy had just completed their dungeon run, finishing it in less than 16 hours, leading them to mistakenly think they had set a new record. But as they reveled in their perceived achievement, the crowd around them was stifling laughter. Realizing something was amiss, everyone quickly glanced at the record displayed in the hall, only to discover it wasn't their record, but the one from the heart of the tyrant. The leader was immediately struck dumb upon seeing my record. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of the kid he had dismissed not long ago. In the very next moment, he found himself unable to control the disbelief coursing through him. How could a level 21 kid surpass them at Bakli Academy so swiftly? The next day, I found myself back in the dungeon hall again. I continued my challenge against the tyrant in the desert. Seeing this, everyone flocked to me, pleading for help, each willing to pay 1,000 points if I would guide them to complete the Academy's mission. Hearing this made me ponder if I could lead 39 people into the dungeon at once. That would mean I could earn 39,000 points. With that thought in mind, I instantly agreed. A death mage was now beginning to offer guiding services, and my business flourished, with lines stretching long. It turned out that everyone had seen me preparing to re-enter the tyrant's dungeon, so they came one by one, begging to join me, each ready to pay 1,000 points as an entrance fee, just to complete the mission assigned by the academy. Hearing this, I agreed, but my condition was that I needed to gather at least 40 people to start. This way, I could complete the dungeon run just once and earn 39,000 points. Upon hearing this, everyone wasted no time. Soon, I led 39 teammates into the dungeon. This time, I immediately summoned my undead warriors and marched towards the oasis. Along the way, we encountered monsters that no one could withstand. However, the experience gained was a headache. What once was millions of experience points dwindled to just a few thousand. Luckily, the points I earned were still enough for me to solo clear the dungeon multiple times. At this moment, the undead warriors in front had run into hundreds of monsters. Seeing this, I quickly summoned a Necromancer to launch an attack. I activated the explosion skill, and in an instant, all the monsters fell. Witnessing this scene, everyone was left in awe. After finishing the task, I instructed them to wait while I dealt with the ant nest, promising to call them afterward. But after 20 minutes passed, one man spoke up, wanting to lure a monster back for everyone's amusement. Seeing Lin Moyu dispatch monsters with such ease, we felt confident that, in our numbers, we could surely handle one. Without hesitation, several people sprang into action. Unexpectedly, the man inadvertently drew another monster. Everyone reacted as if facing a formidable foe. The knight immediately activated their taunt ability to draw the monster's attention. The result, one blow shattered his shield, sending him flying far away. Seeing this dire situation, the combat professions began to exert themselves in their attacks. But their strikes against the monsters were no more effective than a mere tickle. Ultimately, it was only through sheer numbers that they managed to take down one. Nevertheless, their stamina was nearly depleted. Meanwhile, the knight was still fiercely resisting another monster. Witnessing the dire situation, the others began to regret their foolish decision. As the scorpion charged towards them, the zombie warriors I had left behind to protect them finally sprang into action. With a single strike, it was cleaved in two. The rescued ones could not help but shed tears. Fortunately, the spirit god had left behind a guardian summoned to protect us. However, some began to doubt that I was just slacking off. How has it been over 20 minutes and the spirit god hasn't slain a single monster? But as soon as the words left his lips, a barrage of notifications announcing monster slayings flooded in, causing him to exclaim in panic, "This efficiency is terrifying." At that moment, I had reached their nest, and just like before, I used my explosive skills to obliterate them in the blink of an eye. Once completed, I led everyone towards the tyrant's castle. As I burst through the gates of the lost tyrant once more, he materialized before the crowd. But this time, I was far more composed. "Sorry, old friend, but I'm in a hurry this time." Instantly, I commanded my army of zombies to launch an attack on him. To everyone's eyes, the lost tyrant was nothing more than a mere toy. While I spoke, I received the notification that the tyrant had been vanquished. In the next heartbeat, tears streamed down everyone's faces. The mission that had tormented them for years was finally complete. As they rejoiced with cheers, I promptly sent the news back. Back in the subdungeon's main hall, I requested the senior sister to prepare for the next round. Just then, the members of the Bocce Academy caught sight of this scene, and one of them infiltrated the ranks to see how I could conquer the dungeon solo. It didn't take long before I led this group of students into the dungeon. Compared to the last time, this run took less than 7 hours to clear the dungeon. A man from Bocce Academy was left sweating bullets from my combat prowess. Upon returning, he recounted this tale to Bocce Sheng. Upon hearing this, Bocce Sheng immediately devised a countermeasure against me. He called upon someone with whom I had a grudge to strategize. Meanwhile, as I led my group into the dungeon, the news reached the dean. "Oh, Lao Bai, you really keep an eye on that kid, he's quite the chatterbox." This kid has started charging fees in the dungeon's main hall to bring people into the tyrant's dungeon. Hearing this, Bai Shen found nothing strange about it. What's so surprising? Such occurrences have always existed in the academy, but he has brought a whopping 39 people. Most of the students who were stuck in this dungeon have now cleared it. Bai Shen joked that this kid truly has a knack for business. To think of something like this, but the fees cannot be too low, otherwise it would harm others. This remark left the dean absolutely furious. It turns out that Bai Chen has long been dissatisfied with the academy's regulations. For years, countless talented individuals have been left behind in this instance, unable to find teams simply because they lack communication skills. I must say, Lin Moyu is absolutely right. Even Elder Mang beside me agrees that the academy system needs reform. The director, upon hearing this, stood up abruptly, fuming. You two are truly cut from the same cloth. They watched his figure retreat, sighing at the old man's fiery temperament. In this world, only one person could keep him in check. At that moment, I had upgraded my bone armor to level 21 using fruits. With the addition of my innate talent, I could now boast 21,000 points in defense. Even the slow curse had been upgraded to level 21, significantly enhancing its deceleration effects. Before long, my level surged to 22. As expected, aside from the explosive skill, all my other abilities were also upgraded. After numerous runs through instances with others, my contribution points soared to 350,000. Yet, I was still far from my goal. Each use of the ultimate skill required 80,000 points, and I was nowhere near enough to fully comprehend it. It seemed I would need to find a way to earn more contribution points. However, right at today's opening ceremony, Ling Zheng challenged me in front of everyone to prove himself. According to the rules, he was willing to wager 5,000 points. Hearing this, I thought to myself, that's far too little. Without hesitation, I raised a finger. Unless you can wager over 100,000 points, you have no right to challenge me.